Hello everyone, welcome into our latest live broadcast. It's Saturday, it is the 2nd of November 2024. My name is still CareyHolzman. Thanks you guys for joining me today. I'll tell you a little story about where we are, how we got here, and where we're going as we move forward with trying to help another viewer out, which is we started building this machine. A gentleman reached out to me, a gentleman named Richard, and he lives somewhat locally. And he said, you know, this is my situation. I got a pre-built. It's not very good. I used to build computers, but I really can't do it like I used to be able to. Getting older, it's harder to see. Dexterity's not as good as it used to be. I haven't stayed on top of the technology. All the usual reasons we often hear from. Like, I don't care why you don't want to build it. Just I'm happy to help you. So anyway, I said, yeah, of course I can see what we can do. And he said, look, I'm a big fan of movies, and I have a room full of DVDs, thousands. And I like to be able to rip those DVDs and have one big library that I can access without having to get up, go get the DVD, find it, load it. And I'm always like recompressing them and reorganizing. And, you know, I haven't even done my whole library yet. And it takes a long time. And having a hard time finding cases that'll take optical drives. I'm like, yeah, there's still some out there, but this will probably be the last computer you build, likely, where you can find a brand new case that still has an optical drive. So he said, well, I've already done the research, and I found this Fractal Design, this case called a Focus G. You think that's going to be okay? And I said, you know, honestly, I'm not a fan of fractal cases, but not because of their overall quality. I just don't like their design. So if you like the design, I'm sure it'll be fine. And I didn't really even look at it or anything. He says, okay, I'll order it and I'll send it to you. I will also send you my optical drive. I have a couple of NVMe drives. They're just laying around. I'd like to throw them in there. I said, well, if you're going to slow your computer down with those older NVMe drives, I would recommend you put in, you know, if we're going to put in a Gen 4 motherboard, we should put in a Gen 4 NVMe drive. And he said, okay, what do you recommend? And I said, well, the Feijing S880, it's a great deal. And if you want to order one from Amazon, just have it sent directly to me, and I'll put it in for you. And as far as the power supply, the EVGA, what did we go with here? The 650, it's like $55. I go ahead and throw one of those on your order too, and just have it shipped directly to me. And then I'll use one of my prep boards here, which already has a CPU and RAM on it, and we'll get it done for you. So as I started going live with this build, I realized this Fractal Design case is more like something you get off AliExpress than the typical quality I've seen from Fractal. And I didn't know Fractal made cases this poorly. And, you know, I made my feelings known during the video that, look, these are my feelings. I'm not the one that has to live with the thing. It's really a pain to work in it. It sucks. They gave him 2 front fans and no rear fan. They give him 1 USB 2 and 1 USB 3, but they don't give him 2 USB 2s and 2 USB 3s that the plugs consume when you plug them in. So you're going to lose 2 USB ports. There's no USB-C. The case window, it's all plastic. It's not glass. Where the metal, you can this just wobbles back and forth. It's almost aluminum foil, not quite. A little stronger than that. But it's definitely a grade of case that I would call a hot dog case. The front fans do have lights. They're the cheapest fans they could have possibly put in there. And the benefit or the appeal of this case was its price, which was your first warning, and the fact that it had 2 spaces for a DVD and a Blu-ray was the original plan. And as I got over things like this hard drive tray getting in the way of putting the front panel connectors on, and complained about that the entire time, and I got frustrated at the lack of any extra screws, the disorganization with which they were all packed together with nothing left over, just the bare minimums on everything, I just thought, okay, it's, you know, It's one of those cases. Then I realized I was going to have a hard time cable managing this. And I will tell you, the more drives, like if you want to add more SATA drives, you've got to add a SATA cable, and you're going to have to add a power cable. For every drive you add, you are going to quickly crowd this case to a point where you will not be able to close this back panel, or you'll have to route all your cable management to the front, right in front of the window, blocking the view of the motherboard. So that's just a terrible design. This is a design from 2017. And I don't even know that they make this case anymore, but it's still being sold. So with all that, good enough, it'll do. Richard's not as picky as I am. And I went to turn it on, but because all of the LEDs and the hard drive LED and power LED are up on top, I wasn't noticing the power LED wasn't lighting up. So I took it all apart and inspected it. I checked the wiring, I checked the polarity of the wiring. And I checked the pinouts on the motherboard. Just double check, triple check, quadruple check. And the hard drive LED is very, very bright. It works fine. The power LED is hidden behind the power button and shines through the center of the power button. And they're just normal LEDs that are soldered onto a little circuit board that sits underneath this control panel here. Well, I called Richard and I said, look, I don't know if this matters to you, but your power LED doesn't work. Now, if I take the hard drive LED and move it to the power LED header on the motherboard, the hard drive LED will function as a power LED. It's quite bright. There's nothing wrong with the board. But the power LED doesn't work either way, right? Doesn't matter if I reverse positive and negative, nothing matters. I said, if you want, I can ship it to you as is. That's not normally up to my standards. I wouldn't have bought this case. I wouldn't normally take parts from a customer because I have no way to warranty them and I have no control over their quality, and I'm limited in how I can help. So say, for example, the customer orders something from Amazon and has it sent to me, and they order it wrong, or it arrives damaged, or the wrong thing arrives. I'm the one who has to return it. The customer has to act like they're the one returning it, get the approval from Amazon, send that approval to me so I can get it reboxed up, take it in the car, and drive it to wherever it needs to be dropped off for the return. Then, in order to wait for a replacement part, we can't build anymore. That's why this has been sitting. We have to wait until a replacement part comes in. So Richard contacts Amazon and says, I want to return this. And Amazon says, we didn't sell it to you, a third-party seller did. You got to talk to them. Okay, this is getting more interesting. So the third-party seller says, you just go to Fractal Design and they'll send you another control panel. So Richard says, can you send me the model number and serial number that are on this case? It's on the box. Because Richard can't do, see, I can't take care of anything now. This is not a one-man job. Now it's being split between two people, one who does it for a living and one who doesn't. And now everything's being held up by the bureaucracy of it all. So Fractal Design says, sure, we can send you a new front control panel. You just give us this information, and he does. And then they don't respond to him. So it's like, okay, how important is the LED? Is this good enough? And Richard says, what else is there? What else could we consider? And I'm thinking like, man, if we had a 200R, that would be so perfect, But the 200Rs I see for sale now, they want $200 for them. It's just a ripoff. So you can still find them if you want to pay for them. I mean, somebody on eBay's got them brand new in a box for $200 a pop. I don't know. I said, Cougar, the MX410 mesh, we used a lot of those. Those are good cases. Cougar doesn't make those anymore. So let's see what Cougar makes. And sure enough, Cougar does make a case, which I will bring up here. And we have links to all this, of course, in the video notes. But I'm going to come down here to the window capture and share this with you. So it's called the MX330-G Pro. And it's a full glass side panel. It's a slightly better building material. No front fans, but at least there's a rear fan, so that's good. It's a little bit taller. It's a little bit more money. At Newegg, this was maybe $10 or $15 more. than the Focus G that we have. And it appears like it takes two optical drives, one here and one here. So he said, oh, that should be way better, you know. So Richard says, well, how about if I order that and I'll have that shipped to you? And then we can just return the other one and do something. He's like, do you have any reason to use that other one for any reason? I'm like, nope, I would never use this Focus G. Is one of the, I mean, it is built like it's made out of recycled Coke cans. I don't think you could make this any cheaper than they made it. And then when you add the fact things aren't working and their support's not answering, this all comes at a price, all right? So you pay less, don't expect very good customer service. If you get it, fine, but I wouldn't expect it. All right, let's worry about the Focus G case later. Let's focus on getting your computer built. So Richard orders that, sends me the tracking information from Newegg, and Mara's looking at it, and she goes, oh, you're only going to put one optical drive in it? And I go, no, there's two there. She goes, where do you see two? I go, where do you not see two? There's one at the top, and there's one right below it. She goes, no, there isn't. And I'm like, are we, what do you mean, no, there isn't? Look at the picture. She goes, I'm looking at it. What are you looking at? Now I'm getting really frustrated. How can you not see this takes two 5 1/4-inch bays? And she goes, how can you see there are two 5 1/4-inch bays? I go, are you telling me this section right here is different than this? And she goes, yes, they're not the same. And she's looking at this picture you and I are looking at right now. Those look the same to me. I don't know what you're talking about. So you know what? Let's just end this argument and let's just go to Cougar's website and see what they say about it. Or just look through the extended pictures here, because that sure as heck to me looks like a drive goes up here on top and a drive goes here below. Don't you agree? What am I missing? What is she seeing that we're not seeing? And she's looking at the same picture. So I start looking at the other pictures to just prove her wrong. And there's nothing, right? I have nothing that can confirm or deny what this looks like on the inside. So I said, okay, let's go to Cougar's website. We'll visit the Cougar store. We'll look for the MX. Yeah, does that look familiar? We'll look for that MX 330, which is in here somewhere. I'll just search for it. MX330-G. Now there is a 330-G and a 330-G Pro, and that's not coming up. So let's just do Cougar MX330-G Pro. That should take us to the website. That's Amazon Newegg, Amazon Newegg. Okay, CorsairGaming.com. That's what I want. Okay, now we'll get into the details of this case. Now remember, Richard's already ordered it, so that ship has sailed, but now I got to know what the hell is she seeing that I don't see. So let's first of all take a look that we're going to get USB-C, which Richard said in retrospect, had he noticed that about the original Focus G, he wouldn't have ordered it. He didn't think to look at it. He was going to live without it, but he's like, now I've got an excuse, right? So let's, even just for this alone, the USB-C, worth it. Plus he's got twice as many USB ports up here. I mean, he's still got the same number of USB ports that are being cabled, but they're terminating to 4 instead of terminating to 2. So it says right here in the picture, 5 1/4-inch optical drive right here below the top. Well, then what's this? And Mara says, this is what I've been trying to tell you. I'm like, but what's, what's this thing above it? She goes, I don't know. So I call Richard up. I go, darn it, Richard. This case isn't going to work either, because, I mean, unless you want to sacrifice one optical drive, this is what we talk about. It says it's got 2 optical drives right on it. I go, that's not what it says. If we go back to the Amazon page, this just shows you if you want to see what you want to see, you know, you're going to see it. If we look at, because Richard and I both swore we saw that. Let's go over to Newegg right quick. Somewhere on the description, it said it had 2 USBs and a 5 1/4-inch ODD. See here, Type-C Gen 2 support 5.25 ODD, which looks like it says there are support for two 5.25-inch optical disk drives. If you're reading it quickly and you're like, let's get through this, let's find a solution. But if you read it a little more slowly, it's very clear. It has a Type-C Gen 2, and then the next thing they say is support 5.25 ODD, and it doesn't specify 1 or 2, but it doesn't say plural ODDs. It just says 1, supports 5.25-inch ODD. But again, it doesn't specify a quantity. And you can see the price here, $69.99 at Newegg versus the Focus G, which was like $59, $55, something like that. And then you can add $100 to it to add some more air, which I don't understand this at all. This makes no sense. It's the same case with a few more fans. I don't know why it's priced so much higher. So, not everything coming from Cougar is a bargain either. So we say, okay, well, let's see what happens first. Let's find out. And remember, normally when a customer contacts me and they want to build, I supply all the parts. All the parts are here. If I need to return anything for any reason, I'm not holding myself back. And if the customer has any problems going forward, I don't go, hey, that's your problem. You provided me the part. If I provide you the part, I warranty the part. And this is almost true of any business. Because if a customer says to me, we need a new router, what do you recommend? I go, I recommend, whatever. And they say, okay, how much is it? And I give them a quote. Sometimes you get a customer that says, not that Richard is this customer, this is a side note. It's related, but not the same. Sometimes the customer says, I can buy that router $20 cheaper on Amazon. I go, I know you can, so can I. Here's the thing, if you want me to order it for you, I'm doing you a service. I'm giving you the credit, I'm paying for it, financing it, I'm taking responsibility for receiving the shipment. I am then unpacking it, configuring it, delivering it to you, and I'm supporting it if you have any questions in the future because I'm the one who sold it to you. That's considered warranty. So I charge $20 more. I'm going to get it from the same place you're getting it, but I'm going to get paid to order it for you, finance it for you, install it. You're still going to pay me for the install either way, but then warranty it. The customer says, well, what if I just buy it myself and save the 20 bucks? I go right ahead. I'll come in, you let me know when you get it. If you have any problems with it, you return it. If they send you the wrong thing, the wrong item, the thing doesn't work, that's on you. That's not on me. Once you have it, you're ready for me to come over and install it for you, I'll charge you an hourly rate, and when I'm done, there's no warranty on it. I can't help you because you provided it. So if you're going to provide it, you might as well install it yourself. I'm not a charity. I don't owe you anything. I don't think $20 is an excessive profit to give you that peace of mind and remove that burden into them. Oh, it's not a burden. I just click buy it now and it'll probably be okay. Probably will. That's why I'm only charging 20 bucks. But if it isn't, I'm not involved. That's on you to figure out how to file the return, how to get it packaged back up, take it to wherever it needs to go. And if you have problems in 3 months and the unit is bad, it's up to you to contact the company to get a replacement. You'll have nothing to exchange to use in the meantime. So your whole thing is going to be down until you get another one, which could take 2 weeks. I don't know. Whatever you want to do is fine with me. So typically, and the reason why I share the story is often when a customer says, can we use this stuff I have? I typically say no for that reason. Because it reflects me if what I sell them has a problem and they go, hey man, my optical drive stopped working. You just built this for me. You told me what a great machine it was. I go, yeah, but you provided the optical drive to me. So that's on you. I just installed. My job was to just install it. All right. Any parts that I provide to you, I warranty. Any parts you provide to me, I'm putting in just as labor. That's it. I have no idea where those parts are or came from. I don't know how old or how worn out they are. And I don't know what potential impact they may or may not have on your system. And regardless, either way, I'm not responsible for that. So if you insist that you want to use old parts, sure, if you accept those conditions, I'm more than happy to do it. But that's not the normal way I sell a computer. Normally, I sell a computer and I normally say, no, I'm not using any of your old parts, because that could lead to an upset customer that I was just trying to help. And then, you know, they're happy at first, and then a few months down the road when things go wrong and I'm like, there's nothing I can do, they're like, you know, well, you're a terrible person. You should warranty what you build. And I'm like, I do, but that's not, you. I didn't provide you those parts. And they're just angry at the situation. They're angry that they're going to have to figure this out. They're angry at how much more they're going to have to spend if they want me to do it for them, right? And you want me to get the drive for you, and you want me to warranty it, take the old one out, replace it. We can do that for a price. Well, I could just do that for the price of the drive. Yes, you could. And if you would have bought the drive, or if you would have bought everything from me, this would be a different story, okay? And even though I did nothing wrong and I made it clear to the customer up front, when these things happen, a lot of times the customers don't remember that conversation. And then when they hear the answer in a situation that's already bad, that they think, I'm going to call Carey, he's going to take care of it. I'll take care of it for a price. Hey, this thing's under warranty. You just built it 3 months ago. That's where the downward spiral begins. So to avoid that from ever happening, right? Because if I do it, it doesn't mean everybody's going to do that in this situation, but the possibility is there. So I typically remove the possibility, so that is impossible to happen. And it guarantees customer satisfaction unless I really screw up, in which case I deserve it. So a very simple build. Richard's not asking for much. And nothing is, I'm not blaming Richard for anything. I'm using this as an example as to why, over the years, I've adapted my policies and procedures, why they exist. They're not random. I didn't just make them up or copy them from somebody else. They are a response to prevent or avoid circumstances which can upset the customer, and it's not pleasant for me either, because everything I did now has to come out. This has to be put back together, put back in a box, taped back up, and take it back over to where it gets dropped off for a return. And, you know, it's not a big deal. It really is not a big deal. But that's not something I normally do for other people. That's what I do for myself. Unfortunately, because I have agreed into this whole process, unfortunately for me, what should have been a pretty simple job has started to become, it has already become more labor intensive than it would have been under my normal policies. That's not going to kill me. That's not going to put me out of business, right? It's just, like I tell myself, I know better than this. This is why I don't do this. Sometimes I forget why I don't eat at a restaurant, right? So I'll be like, I don't like that place. I don't remember what I don't like about it. So I'll go and I'll eat there, and it's terrible. And I go, oh, now I remember why I don't eat here. And then a few years will go by, and I'll see that restaurant, and I'll be like, I don't like that place. I wonder what or maybe it's gotten better. Maybe things have changed. Let's go try it. Maybe my tastes have changed. Oh, that place is terrible. Why did I eat there? Sometimes I need these reminders. I like to do further testing just to make sure everything's still the same. Have things changed? Have I changed? So, you know, I do a little poking and prodding after a while, because either I can't remember, or it's a good excuse just to see if something has changed, or is it still the same? Because things do change. I change, the restaurant ownership and menus change. And when it comes to, you know, wanting internal optical drives, finding a case that'll take 2 of them is darn near impossible, unless you want to drop $200+ on a server case, which is massive, which is overkill, right? I mean, that's just over the top ridiculous. So today I'm going to remove the motherboard. And again, this is not a big deal. It really isn't. I'm just thinking I shouldn't have to work this hard. This should have already been in the customer's hands under normal circumstances. He'd be watching this video right now with it if things went according to my normal processes. But it is what it is, okay? And nobody got hurt. It's just, I like to think how efficient I am. And in this case, so many steps have caused me to have to take 2 steps backwards. I feel like I'm not a professional. I feel like, have you ever done this before, Carey? But I worked with a case I've never seen before. And the case had multiple problems in getting it built. And then when it was finally built, just before doing the cable management, I noticed the power light didn't work. That required more disassembly and more diagnostic on something that was brand new and should not have required it. But I was looking to see if it's something simple. Is it a loose wire? Did they get the wires backwards, right? If it's something simple, we can work on that. But I still have to take more time to take it apart, take more time to figure out how does this wire go here? Where does it go? Are the connections tight? Well, the connections, they glued them in. There's no way you can unplug those connections, not without breaking the connector. There's that much strong glue on it. It is impossible to remove unless you have some kind of special tools that perhaps can melt the gun without melting the connector. So, you know, for such an inexpensive case, it's not worth all that amount of time and effort for an LED. Now, some customers would say, you know, the LED, it doesn't matter to me. But some customers might also say, well, that's kind of a sign of things, right? So if we get another control panel, who's to say that LED won't work too? And we're just going to keep going on and on. I go, well, it probably will work fine. But you're right. I mean, it's possible. And then when will I get my computer? Well, I don't know. Whenever they send the control panel. Well, when are they going to send it? I go, well, you got to ask them. I don't know. But I can't do anything more until I either have a control panel. You're willing to have a brand new computer that doesn't work right for a part that you bought. He did ask me if it would be okay. But I assumed with Fractal Design, it's probably going to be fine. It's just not a design I like. Again, I had no idea they made cases at this level. This is scraping the bottom of the barrel. I did not know. So we're going to take the motherboard out, which is just a few screws. We're going to take the power supply out. That's just 4 screws. We'll put the panels back on. We're going to put this back in its original box. We're going to get the Cougar out. I've already got it out of the box and waiting. We'll take the panels off. We'll put the motherboard and power supply back in. Everything should be fine. Not a big deal. It's just, what do you want to do? Do you want to wait for the control panel? Do you want to order another case? Then we order the other case. It's like, well, this turns out it does not have 2 optical drives. Do you want to return that case? Stick with this one now? Is this one worth it to get the 2 and lack the USB? Or is it worth it to have the USB and only have 1? You know, and then you're spending more money and we got to return the other one, or should we just use what we have? You can see delay, 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 and then there's a ton of questions. Well, if I did this, then what are the consequences of that? And if I did that, then what are the consequences of this? And then there's what should I pick? And I'm like, I'm happy to answer your questions, but I can't tell you what you should pick, right? I can give you the information to help you make a decision. And once you make your decision, it makes no difference to me if you want to build in this one. Well, you'd have to replace the control panel. Honestly, that's no big deal. I don't mind. Or we can build in that. It's the same to me one way or the other. So that's hours on the phone, right? Again, very unusual. I don't normally spend that much time, or I wouldn't be able to get anything done. And Richard's a pleasure to talk to. I really enjoy talking to him. But the other thing you have to keep in mind is I've got several dozen projects all happening at the same time. I can only do one at a time. I had customers that would order parts and they'd order the parts wrong. And because I was so busy when they ordered parts wrong, I pushed them off to the side. So basically everybody goes in a line in the order that they contact me, right? Well, the minute the customer's made a mistake or something has to go back, which you've seen on live camera before when customers were ordering things and shipping them to me, they go to the back of the line. They get all the way back because everybody else has been waiting and I don't want to hold everybody else up because of this one person. Well, then this one person says, geez, you know, it's been 5 weeks. Where's my computer? I'm like, it's not your turn. I'm still helping the other people that were in front of you. I was helping you. Then we had to wait for all this process. I can't hold everybody up or stop everybody because your stuff just came in. You were scheduled and now you've been rescheduled. And when we reschedule it, if we have another problem, you're going to go back to the end of the line. So the customers are getting ticked off. I'm getting angry and frustrated because I'm responsible for all this stuff that's sitting around my office that doesn't belong to me. And I'm thinking, why am I doing this? I'm not getting rich. I'm trying to help people. And they think that I got nothing else, like some customers not Richard, I'm not talking about Richard, but some customers think, you should be focused on getting me done. I was first. And I'm like, I can't get you done because you provided your own parts. There's a problem with the part. One customer ordered 2 of everything from Amazon, 2 of everything, and put it on a credit card. He couldn't even afford 1 of everything. Okay? So he puts it on a credit card, and what shows up at my door are 2 motherboards, 2 CPUs, 2 cases, 2 of everything. And I say to the customer, we're going to need to return half of your entire order. Well, how do we do that? I've never ordered from Amazon before. Okay, well, I'm going to need remote access to your computer. Well, my internet's really slow. All right, so I log into his computer, have him sign in, and deal with the slow connection. We get all our return codes. I get it all loaded in the car during business hours, during a weekday, right? Take it over to the post office and have it all sent back so he can have a credit. And all of that probably prevented me from making a video that day. Another customer changed the RAM from what we talked about, a parts list, right? And that customer, and remember, I got several builds happening at the same time. So that customer's parts come in and I stick them in a pile. Okay, this is all for customer so-and-so. I'll get to that. They're scheduled. Their schedule comes up. I just make the assumption that they ordered all the parts we discussed and nothing else. I start building the computer live on camera and everything's going swimmingly. I'm not expecting anything I'm not looking out for something to go wrong. And I cannot get the cooler to fit. Now I'm upset because the cooler should fit. And I've got to figure out what went wrong. Did I make a mistake in the parts order? And then I figure out that these aren't the parts I told him to order. And what he did is he added RGB RAM that was so tall, the cooler wouldn't fit anymore because the RGB RAM got in the way. And because the order was screwed up earlier, for some reason, the 30-day return period had passed. So I said to the guy, I said, you're going to need to order new RAM. He goes, well, here's the thing. I don't have any money left. I go, well, if you were that tight on money, why did you change the RAM? Why did you not check with me first? Like, why didn't you even inform me you were changing? No one told me you did this. You didn't tell me. And why did you spend more of money you don't have? He said, well, I don't know, but what are we going to do? So I've got over $1,000 worth of the customer's parts here. And I can't get rid of them until it's done and I can ship it to the customer. What would you do? I said, I'll tell you what. I'm going to take your RAM and I'm just going to see what I have in stock here. It'll be new, not used. That's just normal RAM that I told you to order to begin with, and we'll just do an equal trade of it, all right? Even though your RGB RAM's probably worth a few dollars more, I don't want it. But since you have no ability to replace it, and we can't go forward without it, even if we change the cooler, that's going to cost more than changing the RAM, so that doesn't solve the problem either. He had a nice fancy liquid cooler, and the liquid cooler would not slide into the case unless we change the cooler, or we change the case, or we change the RAM. And the cheapest one of those things was the RAM. This was all happening live on camera. And that was about the last straw for me, because other things had gone wrong with the guy ordering everything twice and then complaining about how long it was taking to get it done. Well, I'm trying to help other people who are complaining, aren't I scheduled? When's my schedule? When can I expect to see the video? And I have to stick to that. I can't say, well, now I have to extend you another day and everybody behind you has to be extended another day, or I'll get so far behind with that, how will I ever get anything other than buried even deeper? That's just not a good direction. Don't go down that road. So anyway, it's been a while. And when I heard from Richard, I thought, you know what? It's been a long time since I've done this. Let's do it. Business on new PC side has been very slow. I think you guys would enjoy the content. I would enjoy helping somebody locally. He's a very nice guy. Really enjoy talking to him. I want to build this for him. Now, and it's no fault of his own, I'm a little frustrated that I knew better. I probably should have said no. And this is my reminder that it's not, when somebody contacts me and I say, you know, it's probably not a good fit, it's not personal. It's just, I'm going to have to work harder than I normally work and likely earn less than I normally earn. Which, if I have nothing else better to do, is fine. But when I have other things, you know, I do other things besides this, in case you're wondering. But I thought, this sounds like fun. He sounds like a great guy. I want to help him. And nothing that happened is tragic, and nothing that happened is anything other than lumpy. Okay? I've been doing this a long time. I have a nice, smooth process, and this has been not a smooth process. And it's not anybody's fault. I could have looked more carefully at this case when he asked me, do you think this case is okay? I didn't even bother. I saw it was Fractal Design. I just said, yeah, it's probably going to be fine. Right? That's on me. On the other hand, I didn't know of any other cases available, certainly not off the top of my head, that would take 2 drive bays, and it was going to take time and research to even locate one. Other than maybe, you know, looking for some massive server case or, you know, $200 case or above, which was way overkill, or finding like a used Corsair 200R that somebody might have laying around that's going to be scuffed up and scratched up, and again, no USB Type-C on that either because of its age. So one way or another, because of the customer's desire to keep the 5 1/4 inch bays, it was like, I don't want to do that, so I'm sure that case is fine, you know. And here we are. So that's how we got here. And it's a relatively simple job. Once we have once we know what to do to move forward to resolve this, it's just taken like 3 or 4 days to figure out where do we go from here. Now we know where to go, and now I can finish the job. In the meantime, once this case is taken apart, my job's still not done. I still have to box this back up like it was new, put it back in the box, get it labeled, take it over to the post office. The other case has to get boxed back up because that has to be shipped to Richard, because even though he's local, he's within the state, but he's nowhere near me. He's about 3 hours away. So that's a 6-hour round trip, maybe 7-hour round trip drive. So I'm going to ship that to him, which means packing that up and taking that over. Then there's the tracking information. Then there's making sure Richard gets it okay. And if everything goes smoothly, it'll arrive on time, as estimated by the tracking info. It will arrive without damage, and Richard will be able to plug it in, turn it on, and start using it. And it'll be the best computer he's owned for at least the next 8 years. That's what I'm shooting for, because he's got a great motherboard and a great processor, and this thing should be solid for a number of years, and he should be very, very happy with it compared to the frustrations he's had with his pre-built. That's my goal. Just making me work for it. Let me say hello to everybody in the chat room. Shout out and a thank you to our friend Buster with a 10-pound super chat. He says, good evening, Carey and Mara. Everyone in the chat, hello. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland. Temperature in Edinburgh today, 53 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 11.6 degrees Celsius. Thank you, Buster. Mark Gaines with a 10-pound super chat says, hey, Carey, Mara, and everyone in the chat. Mark joins us from Northern Ireland. We're going to cover our way across the UK. Thank you, Mark. Raj D renews membership, now a member for 19 months. Thank you, Raj. Our friend Charlie Purdy there with a $10 super chat says, hello, Carey, Mara, and everyone in the chat. Our friend Ken, known as Find Me in Hawaii, contributes a very generous $49.99 super chat. He says, I love the intros and outros. Here's money for Studio C. Well, appreciate it. We don't so much need money for Studio C now as we do for buying parts for content. I should have, for example, the 9900X from AMD, a motherboard That's white in RAM, that is RGB and white, coming in from Amazon today. Those 3 parts cost 400, 600, about $750 for those 3 parts. I have enough solid state drives. I have a couple cases laying around, and I have a lot of power supplies hanging around. So that'll be a build that we were able to do through your Amazon gift cards. And I can't thank you enough for those, because that makes, when you contribute via Super Chat, which I absolutely appreciate, YouTube's taking 30% of your money and making me wait 30 days to get it, 30 to 60 days. If you contribute via PayPal, PayPal takes 3% of your contribution, but I get the money right away. But if you give an Amazon gift card, which is likely where I'm going to spend it so I can buy stuff to make the content, that with an Amazon gift card means there's no fees and there's no delays in receiving the funds, and that's where I'm probably going to spend it. So any type of support, though, even just coming in and saying hello, is always appreciated. And you guys, you got to know that without your support, my content would look very different. So we're able to do things a little bit more extravagantly and to do it more often, so long as we have the budget. Or we take on sponsorship where somebody sends us something they want us to review. We don't necessarily get the choice. Their marketing company is pushing this particular product this month and they want you to review it, and you've got to, follow their rules or they won't send you anything again. As long as we can afford to buy the stuff ourselves, we are free to say whatever we want because it's ours. So that's how we're trying to make this work. And without you guys, well, it just wouldn't work. And we thank each and every one of you for your generosity and your support. And of course, even using our Amazon links below in the show notes to make any purchase from Amazon, anything at all, not just what the link takes you to. While you're at Amazon, if you make any purchase, say you click on the link to this case, and you're like, I don't want that case, but well, I'm at Amazon, I do need to pick up some whatever. I make a small commission from that. You don't pay anymore. I don't know that you did it. I know somebody did it, but I don't know it was you. So it's a nice anonymous way to support the channel, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. So that's just also, because some of the part names are very long, the link taking you there ensures that you're at the right part. For example, the Cougar case has different, slightly different model numbers. Some of these motherboards have different versions. One might say Wi-Fi, one might not say Wi-Fi. One might say D4 for DDR4 or D5, and that's the only one change, but it's an entirely different motherboard at a different price from the same company. And this confusion can happen if you're not paying attention to the details. So when you click on our links from Amazon, you know it's taking you to the right product, and you don't have to type in all those little things, or Google search, whether you typoed it or Google search for whatever reason, provided you the other model first, which has happened to me. We've seen it happen. Even I sometimes don't notice it. Sometimes I'm not aware that there were so many similar models from the same manufacturer. I wish they would give them more drastically different names than just changing one letter. But that's how it is. All right. Richard Claymore. Oh, there's Richard with a $20 super chat. Right on. Thank you, Richard. Richard's been a saint through all of this. It's been a little frustrating for me. And, if it was my first rodeo, I'd probably scratch my head and go, isn't this interesting? But I've been through this so many times before. I'm like, here we go again. So I'm sure I haven't had the best attitude through it, but at the same time, this should have already been in Richard's hands under my normal processes. And I know he's eager to get his hands on it. So let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. William Denton joins us, says hello. There's Eddie Casanova and Martin Postema saying hello. Dennis Hill and Scott. Doman 2000 and Andre Duke say hello. Peter Lecoq says, in the photo yesterday, that was a flat screen monitor, not a CRT. It's very important. He was not using a CRT. And he says he was eating an apple tart. Ooh, that sounds good. And the book I was reading was The Wheel of Time, Book 9. I've heard good things. I know they turned that into a movie that didn't do well. Was that Oprah Winfrey in that movie? Classic fantasy series. I've never read it, but I've heard good things. Gil Garcia says hello. There's Arnold Albert and Jonathan. David Graham, Pokemon, say hello. And they say hello. 3D Everything says hello. Joe Panico says good evening. Good evening, Joe. Chris McGraw, Eduardo, all saying hello. Paul Connolly joining us. Wayne Ellison and Ron Barnish and Kay Morton say hello. John Downey said adding $20 to the price of that router is nothing. You should be including your overhead. 50% should be a minimum. Yeah, I've heard that before. I don't know. I just treat people the way I wish I was treated, and I hope I make it up in referrals so I don't have to do any marketing. Let people do my marketing. Let my customers market me to other people that they know that, like, hey, you got to use this guy. You know, oh, you're having a computer problem, you got to call Carey. Let me give you his number. That's really worked well for me, because the flip side of that is that you can charge more, but then you can also have to pay for marketing to try and acquire new customers. I'm not sure which one ends up being more profitable, to be honest. But customer acquisition cost, I would prefer to be zero, because word of mouth is free. If I send out flyers or I, do any kind of marketing, it costs money. And sometimes it costs more money than it makes. That's why I don't do it anymore. Waddle says, be quiet might have a case you need. I thought about like the Pure Base 900, something like that. But it's very big and heavy. And because it's being shipped, I just felt like this, first of all, he doesn't need a case that big. Secondly, it's going to cost more to ship. And third, when I went looking for it, a Be Quiet case with two optical drive bays, couldn't find one. So that was a thought I had, but I did some research on it. Didn't spend a whole lot of time. Couldn't find it. They had a case with one drive bay, but we wanted two. And then when we ordered the Cougar, we thought we were getting two. Peter Lightcock says, I want to thank the generous contributions from Mark Gaines, Charlie Purdy, and Find Me in Hawaii, and Richard Claiborne. Could there be a nicer guy? I mean, really. Thank you, Buster. Captain Malinsky says, have your audio settings changed from yesterday? It sounds somewhat tinnier and hissier. Yes, because the air conditioning isn't running anymore, I lowered the suppression down a little bit, because I've been hearing sometimes the suppression's cutting me out a little early or a little late. But I might have taken, see, I can't hear it, right? I can hear it after the fact, but I'd have to be wearing a pair of headphones right now. I don't have an audio engineer that can be making adjustments while we're live. I have to do it myself. And when I make these adjustments, I have to guess. So we were at a -7 decibels on our suppression. I lowered it to a -2, which is a pretty big difference. If I bring it a little closer back to 7, we can go to split the difference. And now we're at a -4. You might notice less hiss. I don't know. I can't hear it. You'd have to tell me. I don't know. But it's not you. It's not you. We're still messing around, because when the air conditioner is running 8 months out of the year, I definitely need noise suppression. And the noise suppression, I can continue to refine it. with regards to how fast it triggers and attacks. But I really need to sit down and put the headphones on and kind of work it out. And as the studio changes, the audio dynamics of the room change, and then we're right back to square one again. So I really feel like I need to get the studio in place before I polish and refine the video and audio that much. Right now I'm just trying to get it in the ballpark, right? Good enough. And with the cooler weather finally here in Phoenix, I just wanted to take the suppression down. I probably took it down a little too much. But I appreciate the feedback, and if I haven't taken it up enough, let me know. Or maybe you haven't even noticed any difference. Mark Gaines says, thank you to Buster for thanking me. He says, we should all be thanking you, Buster. Henry says the bad thing about the older case is they don't have any room under the motherboard for cables. Well, worse than under the motherboard is behind the motherboard, right? You'd think just make the case a little bit longer, or sorry, a little bit thicker, just a little bit thicker, and give me some room in here so I can put the cables back behind the motherboard and still be able to put this back panel on. You just got to make the case just a little bit wider, not by much, maybe half an inch wider. We're good to go. We don't need a dual chambered case that's, you know, this wide. Or if we had a power supply shroud, right? Which a lot of modern cases have. We can tuck the cables down in the hard drive tray. Never see them. But in the older cases, their cable management consideration was only found on the more expensive cases. Now it's sort of become expected regardless. Find Me in Hawaii said, the channel sure beats going to the movies. Carey provides all the humor, the drama, the suspense, and the excitement. Let's get the trailers going. Thank you, Ken. Fred says, why has M.2 storage become so expensive? I think it's gotten cheaper. I don't think M.2's gotten more expensive. We were buying, listen, if you could get a terabyte NVMe drive for $100, that was a good deal. Now you can get a 2 terabyte NVMe drive that's twice as fast for about $100. 8 terabyte drive, NVMe drive, was $1,200. The cheapest I've ever seen it was $800 on an NVMe drive. But today, right now, if we go to Amazon, let's just go up here together and take a look at this. I can't believe how much the prices have come down. Western Digital makes one of the fastest Gen 4 drives, name brand, Western, I suppose if my keyboard will work, Western, there it goes, Digital 8 terabyte SN850X. That's your good drive, maximum capacity. That drive was $800. And at $100 a terabyte, for that capacity on one drive, was one of the cheapest on the market. Today, that drive is $649. This is a fast drive. This is up to 7,200 megabytes per second. This is a 5-year warranty. This is a major name brand. $650. It listed for $880. I don't even know what to say how you could think M.2 drives are expensive. They have never been cheaper, as far as I know. And furthermore, not only are they cheaper today, and I'm not talking about just Western Digital, I mean everyone is cheaper. If you think it's still too much money, we'll just wait, because we have the holidays around the corner. And as long as we remain in this sort of inflationary period where, you know, you're spending $180 for 2 bags of groceries, people don't have that extra income to spend on things they don't absolutely need. That means these companies aren't generating the revenue they need to generate, and that makes them more heavily discount their products in the holidays to try and boost up their end-of-year income. So I expect, because of the economy, we are going to see some great deals this holiday season, just everywhere, whether it's Walmart, Target, Amazon. Everybody wants your dollar. Everybody's hungry. You're hungry, I'm hungry, they're hungry. We're all starving. That motivates them to be less greedy, right? Now it's like, let's just move some inventory and show our investors we are moving inventory and we're successful. Not that we're stagnant, we're sitting on product, we're still manufacturing product, the product is building up and our income is slowing down. They need to bring that income up, even if it means selling the product, even at a financial loss, to show their investors, you know, we can work the numbers out, we've got demand for our product. There's two different angles you got to work at here. So I suspect, and again, I'm just speculative here, I think you're going to see some real good deals because of the state of the economy. And I think a lot of people are going to say, wow, that is a great deal. Too bad I still don't have the money to buy it. But enough people, I think, will, that it'll likely sell out regardless. So if it's important to you, I would add something to a wish list or make a note to check on that specific model of thing you're looking at and start watching for those sales as we approach the holidays, because they're going to sell quick. Just so you know. Let's see, go back over to my chat room here. Chico says, that sounds better. All right, thanks, Chico. Captain Linsky says, there is less hiss now. It wasn't too bad, though. Okay, well, again, I just need to find some time to put some headphones on. Luke Grania says, I see the memory leak is still as bad as ever. There are a couple of solutions online that we're testing. We're not the only folks dealing with it, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to be enough folks reporting it that Google's doing anything. I will share with you what I have learned, but I will tell you I've never tested this. I don't know, it could be causing problems if you install this. I have no idea. I can only tell you based on what research I've done, this seems to have helped a lot of people, unless all of those people aren't real and the whole thing's a scam to get you to install a virus. Although it passes all the virus check. But if you're using Google Chrome on a Windows computer, let's see, did I copy it here locally? I just put together a little notepad document. And the notepad document is this. To fix the live chat memory leak, you're going to go to the Chrome Web Store and you're going to download an application called TamperMonkey. All right. This is an extension that goes on your browser. Once TamperMonkey is installed, you install this script that is made for TamperMonkey. You don't like it? It's not working? It doesn't work. It's not working?
It doesn't work.
There are a couple other, so there's two. And so some people are reporting it's not working for them and this other one works, and some people are reporting the other one doesn't work for them and this one works. All right. So this is clearly working for some people. This is a little tricky, but basically this is a script designed to be installed in TamperMonkey, which is its own thing. And it's pretty easy, it's small, it's easy to turn on, turn off, and uninstall if you don't like it. It could cause your YouTube to crash. It may make things worse. If you choose you want to do this, well, it's up to you. You can also do your own research and search under this term. There are at least 3 scripts that I'm aware of made for TamperMonkey that claim to solve this problem. One's like super fast chat, one is JavaScript clear, or what do they call that? And then when you look in the top right of your Google Chrome, you're going to see a little puzzle piece, and when you click on that, you'll see your extensions. I like to push the little pin button so I can always see the extension without having to click the little puzzle piece at the top right, but that's a choice I like. Once you've added the script to TamperMonkey, you probably it's going to say there's no scripts, unless you go to YouTube Then you look at your TamperMonkey extension, and then you'll see your installed script is running. So it only affects youtube.com. What I found so far, it is not affecting the YouTube Studio. The script isn't running because I can click on TamperMonkey and see there's no script running. But if I go to youtube.com and click on TamperMonkey, the script is running, and it has an individual enable or disable option on it. If you want to experiment with it, it appears to be safe, but it might cause you a lot of frustration and headache, or it might solve the problem. You're going to have to tell me. With regards to this long link that, this would be a pain to type this in, I would say we can add, hey Mara, can we just go ahead and add this to the show notes? Because I don't want people to have to type all that in. Or you can just Google it, right? Google will take you to TamperMonkey.
Did you ask my question?
These notes, can we just add these notes to the viewers, to the video notes, and let the viewers decide for themselves? Okay. Because that's a lot to type in. I mean, that's a whole lot of K-E, B-E, B-M, K, F, J, O, J. That's ridiculous. Okay. Again, a Google search, if you just typed in TamperMonkey, especially in the Chrome Web Store, would probably take you right there. And then this whole greasy fork thing is not a big deal to type in, but we can provide the links for you just to make that a little easier. And if you choose to install it and things go sideways, I warned you. On the other hand, if you choose to install it and it fixes the YouTube crashes if you're experiencing them, please let us know. Either way, let us know. And we'll figure out through consensus what's working and what's not working. But it's somewhere to start because Google's not helping. This was first reported in April to Google, around March or April. This has been going on now for over a half a year. And so far, Google has no update with regards to getting this fixed. It is a JavaScript issue. So I appreciate you bringing that up because I was on the fence about whether or not to mention it. You guys are bright. You can make your decision. You're adults. You understand if you want to do this. I'm not necessarily recommending it unless you understand this is very beta, okay? And if you want to be part of that testing process, please do. And if you don't want to, please don't. All right. Look, Greenie said the issue's affecting all of my browsers. Well, this is just for Chrome. So I understand that Opera and Firefox and Edge are also having the same issue. It's definitely some kind of a JavaScript related, and it deals with, I guess, if there's a lot of emojis in the chat room or there's a lot of contributions. You can watch your memory usage if you hover your mouse at the top of the browser window. Just hover your mouse over one of your open tabs, or if you only have one tab, just over the whatever tab you have open, and it'll show you like a little preview of that tab, and at the very bottom it's going to show you what your memory usage on that tab is. And if you watch that while you're in my YouTube live chat or any live chat, it's only live chat related. It doesn't happen where there is no live chat. If you're like in incognito mode and you're not signed into YouTube, you're watching the chat, but actually I think you'd have to close the chat. The error, you'll watch your memory stops growing. And what's happening is it's storing up so much memory. The JavaScript cache is storing up so much memory, it's running out of memory. That's all I know. So we're getting closer to finding a solution by understanding first what the problem is. We can replicate this problem over and over and over again. In my YouTube Studio, for example, the memory tab says it's using 772 megabytes of memory, and yet the Amazon tab said it's only using 226 megabytes of memory in that tab. And then I have a separate window just on my YouTube channel, not the YouTube Studio, with the chat open, and that one is using 481 megs of, and it's growing as I talk. It just moved from 480 to 481, but it takes a little bit. When it hits a certain number, it'll crash. Clearly there's a memory leak, but not enough people are reporting this to Google. There is a feedback button. Where's the feedback? There's a feedback button that you can report this to Google, to YouTube. And if a lot of people start doing that, they'll say, hey, this is enough of a problem for us to spend our time and money to get it resolved. But if not enough people are reporting it, it goes into the stack of other problems people report, right? It's got to be something a lot of people are experiencing. Otherwise, they blow it off. So there is a way to report it, and it's called feedback, and that exists somewhere here. It's not under reporting, because reporting is for like reporting content violations. What we're looking for is feedback about the YouTube experience, that a video is not playing correctly or YouTube is crashing. That's where you use the feedback. But you can actually watch that number grow on the tab if you're in live chat on any YouTube live video. And if the video lasts long enough and there's enough chat activity, it's going to go snap, and it's going to run out of memory. Amara has just added those links to those two. You know, Tamper Monkey is the extension, and then the other link is the script that is for that extension. There are two other scripts. You don't want to run all three of them. You run one at a time until you figure out which one works for you. I don't have the other. If you Google it, you'll see there's a whole discussion taking place, like on Reddit and other places, that points you to these links. That's where I found them. I didn't invent them. You can get the same search results I got, and later on I can add the other links. I just don't know which one's updated more frequently, which one's old, and which one actually fixes the problem for most people, or if any of them work at all. And it says the three dots near the top of the X on the top of the chat, three dots, says send feedback. So the three dots over the chat, that's it. That's where you, thank you, that's exactly it. That's the feedback tool we're looking for. And they say, tell us what prompted the feedback. And in there you can explain, anytime I'm on it, I'm watching a YouTube live video in a chat room, the memory in my browser tab grows and grows and grows until the browser crashes with snap. And you might further tell them you have tried this with Firefox and Opera and Edge, and you have the latest version of Chrome, and you have signed out of your account, and you have cleared your cache, and you have signed back in, and you have tried this on multiple devices. This way they don't give you the boilerplate response, because you can just shut that down. Because they're going to tell you, sign out of your account, clear your cache, sign back in, let us know if the problem still occurs. That is the boilerplate response everybody gets. So you can just shut that right down by saying you've already done all that. It's made no difference. You've tried multiple browsers, multiple systems, multiple accounts. Doesn't work. It's easily reproducible. And this has been going on since March or April. And that should get their attention if they get enough of it. But we've got to get enough of it to make them pay attention. Because if this has been going on since March or April, clearly not enough people are complaining. Yes, thank you for that, Ant. That is correct. Just above the chat room, right at the very top of the chat window, you'll see the X, and beside the X are three vertical dots, top to bottom. Click there, you'll find the feedback. That's what they want you to do. This applies to Firefox. It'll crash Firefox. It crashes them all. One crash to fit them all. I've been addicted to this channel. It's been around a long time, and I've watched it off and on. But I think the guy's getting better and better. And many of you probably familiar with this YouTube channel. But since we're talking about having a sense of humor, there's a channel called Sam Time, and it's mostly about Apple products, and it's very sarcastic. And I have to tell you, it's freaking hilarious. I don't know how this guy keeps coming up with so much new material multiple times, just frequently posting videos about new product from Apple, or what Apple users think of Windows users, or what Windows users think of Apple users. And it is just drop out of your chair funny. He's a New Zealand Kiwi content creator, but his accent is very easy to understand, and his humor for me is very relatable, because he'll talk about the latest smartphones and how a Mac user or an iPhone user sees an Android user, or the other way around, or how a Linux user sees Windows users or Mac users. It is very funny. Kudos for him not just repeating the same jokes over and over and over. The content is always refreshingly sarcastic, which has got me on board for that. You guys watch Sam Time? Anybody here know Sam Time? Fantastic. You'll learn nothing, but it's hilarious. All right, well, an hour and 15 in, I guess I'll do my 10 minutes of work here. Again, not a big deal. It's really just about having a direction, knowing, okay, where do we go from here? How do we proceed? That takes a while to discuss what our options are and maybe explore. Can we return this? No. Will they send us a replacement? Yes. When? I don't know. They won't respond. So should we order another case? Okay. When will that arrive? I don't know. Will that arrive okay? We'll find out. Are there going to be any problems with it? We don't know. So we just have to pick something and go. Or choose to wait indefinitely until we get answers, or we move forward until we get to the answers by forcing them, right? Either way, it's all the same to me. Let's just keep moving. Luckily, I am an expert at taking things apart. I mean, I'll tell you what, putting it back together, once one thing, but taking it apart, nobody's better than me. I'm your demo man. This USB-C, no, what is this? USB 3 cable. It's only on with a friction fit. There's no clip. And on some motherboards, they just pop right off. And on other boards, it's like you gotta wiggle and pull, and sometimes it'll pull the whole plastic header off the board. So you don't want to use too much force with it. You want to, if you're struggling to install or remove something from the PC, you're missing something. You're doing it wrong, and brute force is never the answer, unless you're throwing it into the trash can, which we're not doing. So we don't want to damage anything by being too aggressive with it. Sometimes it's just the angle. And when you have a cable that tight, try not to pull it by the cable, but to grab the actual connector, or you might end up yanking the cable right out of the connector. Now you're going to have a ripped cable in your hands. Now the case is no longer under warranty because you broke it. And they think that's why you're returning it, because you broke it. All right, got the USB-C cable off. And I'll go ahead and pull off the USB 2 and our front port umbilicals that were just so close to that hard drive tray. Very tight fit. And then we have our front port audio cable. That's, oh, and we have our 12 volt EPS CPU power. That's it. That's all there was. I mean, it's really no big deal. We can take these cables and just pull them back through so they don't get in our way. This is very easy. Very easy. This is another slight case design issue where we cannot get the power cable to come out. The hole's not big enough. We might have to take the board out to get, no. Again, it's just a little finessing. Normally, I work with cases that this is never an issue. The openings for the cabling are normally more than generous. Sometimes they're tight. This one actually is pretty generous up here. This one down here, if you recall, we had to take the power supply out to get the audio cable in. I've never had to do that on a case before. But that means in order to get this cable out, the power supply's got to come back out. Now, who cares? The power supply's coming out anyway. But can you imagine how frustrating that would be? When almost any other case you'd buy on the planet, you wouldn't be taking your power supply in and out unless you wanted to. All I want to do is get this audio cable out, and I cannot. The power supply is preventing us from removing it. That's just bad case design. The hard drive cage being so close to the front port of the board, bad design. It's just bad design everywhere. I have a little wire tie I'm putting on these fans because that's the way they sent them to us, and that's how they're going to get them back. David Graham with a $2 super chat. Right on. Thank you, David. David says, I like how you convince yourself that you're not mad. Well, I'll tell you what. Sometimes it's just a moment of self-awareness that I don't realize I'm getting mad. And I ask myself, my internal dialogue is, do you want this to control you, or do you want to control you? Right? So I start getting worked up, and then I go, wait a minute. Why am I letting this determine what my mood is? Shouldn't I determine what my mood is? And it might appear to be a little bipolar to people that don't realize what's happening. But I start to hear myself, and I go, wait a minute. Being happy or being mad is a choice that I make, and I have to remind myself of that. And that's why you'll see the shift. What's happening is I'm realizing, wait a minute, I don't want to be mad. I don't want this company to control my emotional state. It's my life. It's my choice. And once that self-awareness kicks in, and it's all practice, right? Just keep practicing and practicing and practicing. Once I'm aware of it, I correct it. And I go, hold on. I am not going to allow myself to be manipulated any further. Now that I've realized I'm being manipulated by this company or, what's ever upsetting me, I'm still making a choice. I'm just not aware of it. Soon as I become aware of it, I choose better. That's what you're witnessing. It's not that I'm convincing myself. It's rather that I'm just becoming self-aware and realizing, it's a choice. They say life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you voluntarily choose to react to it. Somebody wants to argue with you, you can choose not to participate in that argument. It really doesn't matter if they agree with you or not. In most cases, you're arguing for no reason. You just want somebody to see your point of view. Why? Who cares? Maybe let's just get to the chase and say, you know what? Whatever, you're right. I agree with you. Even if you don't, just be done with it. It's healthier mentally. And it might frustrate the other person because they feel like you're telling them it's not worth your time. That's beautiful. Now you've reversed who's getting pissed off. Just be like, I'm not participating in this discussion. I'm not going to say they like that answer, but I don't care. You don't get to decide what my state of mind is, or it's not my job to change your mind so you agree with me. If you have self-confidence and true belief in what you believe is to be true, then if other people agree with you or they don't agree with you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't change what is true. If everybody around me is telling me the earth is flat, I know the earth is round. If they don't want to believe that, what difference does that make in my life? How does that help me get the bills paid at the end of the month? How does that help me put food on the table? What benefit is there for me to get somebody to see that clearly the earth is round? And further, don't I have anything else better to do? But just because they all say it doesn't make it true. And if you know what you believe is true, you don't need the affirmation and approval of others. And to do so is doing them a favor. And if they don't want the favor, take the hint. And they're just enjoying bickering. If you're not enjoying the bickering, volunteer out of it. Say, you know what? Doesn't matter. I agree with you. You're absolutely 100% correct. What else you want to talk about? And life goes on. Either way, you're going to get there. Why not get there faster? These are choices we can choose to make if we want to. All right, motherboard screws coming out. 1, 2, 3, 3 more over here. 1, 2. You guys should be able to hear the driver now a lot better. I know the noise suppression before was really canceling a lot of that out. And then I'll go ahead and take the power supply out, because I think the power supply with the audio cable is going to make it difficult to take the motherboard out. It's like the knee bone's connected to the... It's kind of like, you know, that old song where it's like a series of things that have to come out in a certain order. Most modern cases, you would not do this. Now, if you're going to go buy something old or you're going to go buy something cheap, you're going to pay for it this way instead of with money. You're going to pay for it with your time. And if you enjoy puzzles, it won't be as clear in a lot of these types of cases how the path forward is to get to your destination without figuring out the arrangement that has to go in. In the end of the day, you can get it to work. It just, you might cut your hands with sharper edges. You might be limited with what you can put in. You might have more difficult time in cable management. And if you don't mind all that, you know, knock yourself out. I just want you to know what to expect. Help you make a choice that's right for you. You don't have to make a choice that's right for me. All right, so this power supply will go into the new Cougar case. And our motherboard should now pop right out. And that will go into the new Cougar case. And the customer's provided the 2 older NVMe drives that he's attached heat sinks onto. I don't know why, but that's fine. And then we have a DVD drive. It's just a standard ASUS drive. They still sell these. I don't think they still make them. These things run forever. This one says it was made... when? 2017. Hey, that's when they made the case. No joke. All right. Well, we need the I/O shield. You don't want to forget this I/O shield. But I mean, it's such a simple thing to take things apart. Now our audio cable will come out of that little tiny hole, which obviously was not positioned well. And part of that is because the height of the case it's too short. If you were to put a full-size motherboard in, that we did, that it says it supports at the most, it bumps up against the power supply, which tells me the case really was not designed as it was advertised. Because, well, technically it fits, there are consequences that there's no space or gaps where there would be in a normal case, which would just be just a little bit taller than this. Also, if you wanted to change the filter on the bottom, on these really inexpensive budget cases, there's no magnet, there's no plastic frame. What you get is a piece of screen door that's being held in by pieces of bent metal where the bottom plate of the case went through a punch machine and they just punched these little slots. Now, look how big the filter is. Look how long this is, right? It only goes in one way. I guess you could flip it, but it only goes in one direction. And you can't see this when the computer's sitting upright with all the parts in it. Now your power supply is down here and it's sucking air in, right? It's back here. And you can see these cutouts are making room around the feet. Well, unless you pick your computer up and put it on its back, and this is going to be difficult if you've got cables plugged in or antennas, you're going to potentially break everything that's in the back by putting all the weight down onto it. So that means you got to unplug everything to be safe, or you're going to have to tilt this so you don't put all the weight of it onto all those connectors, because you will break those connectors. Anyway, so then you get this thing off, you clean it, you go to put it back on, and it's not just slide it in the track and it locks in like it does with NZXT, Corsair, Cooler Master, Be Quiet. In this situation, you have just a flimsy piece of screen with no frame, and you've got to pay attention to how you can get it to align into the little punched out pieces of metal on the bottom, the left, and the right, and you have to twist the frame, basically, just like you would maybe bend a picture to get it into a picture frame that has little tabs that hold the picture in place. Only you're doing it with an electronic piece of equipment that is, in some cases, heavy. You may not have room to set it on its back, and you might think this 5-minute job is now taking me a half an hour. This is the price you paid with a cheaper case, because they didn't consider you in this, because if they did, they would have not been able to build it as cheaply, so then they wouldn't have been able to sell it as cheaply, and you were looking for a cheap case. So now I'm checking. See, I missed one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 3 here. 1, 2. Nope, missed that one. Missed that one. Are you kidding me? This might need to be done 3, 4 times a year. You couldn't just give me a pull tab that I can pull from the front? No, I got to flip this thing on its back, or maybe onto its side. I suppose you could do it on its side too, but either way, that's to flip this onto its side. I hope you got a lot of room on your floor for that, just to clean that filter. Nobody is as good of a complainer as I am. I can find so many things wrong with this. So, yeah, I'm disappointed in Fractal. I thought they were better than this. This whole thing right now weighs about 3 pounds. I mean, it's nothing. Ain't nothing to it. Yeah, it's about 3 pounds. Now, to prevent the cables from slapping around and shipping, I'm going to throw a wire tie on it just the way they sent it, and that's why they send it that way. So we're going to just grab these umbilicals, and it doesn't have to be pretty. We just want to tie them up on the inside so we don't have any trouble putting the back panel on. You notice manufacturers do that, don't you? They put all your cables that you're supposed to run behind the motherboard. They don't put them behind the motherboard, because then they'd have a trouble getting the back panel on. So that's your problem. Yeah, that ought to be good enough. Even that doesn't really go on well. It absolutely has to have the thumb screws. It's just going to fall off without them. The thumb screws should be in the motherboard box along with all the other spare parts. When we return the case, we've got to make sure to return the screws as well. You don't have to return the zip ties, okay? Don't worry about that. Here's one of the thumb screws here. I do think these thumb screws were supposed to remain captive, but they sure did come out awfully easy. And I should have one more in here. Yeah, there it is. So what we return with the case will be, again, we don't have to put the cardboard box back in it, but we definitely want to put the bag of screws in there, Probably want to tape it down so it doesn't fly around inside the case, or lay it on top of the case in the box. Any documentation, give them back. Everything you can give back. Just to avoid any reason for them to say, sorry, you know, we're going to do a 20% restocking fee because you didn't send it to us complete. When you're dealing with Amazon directly, that's not typically a problem, but with third-party sellers, they might be great, they might not be, who knows. So if you want to just increase the odds of everything going smoothly, try to see it coming and then, you know, make a game out of it. Okay, I did everything perfectly. Let's see if you can find anything. I'm sure you're not going to find anything. Do your best. Do your worst. Again, a little struggle with the side panels is normal when you're dealing with materials that are so flimsy. They don't maintain a very stiff shape. So as I'm putting it on, it's warping and bending in my hands that easily. And then it only goes on correctly when it's straightened. And that's par for the course. You know, Fractal's not the only one to do this. I'm just surprised they joined the club. I'll have to be a little bit more careful and pay attention to the lights. The power light is up here and I just didn't see it. A lot of times on some cases, the power buttons are up front. Therefore, if it's got lights, you'll typically see them up at the front. Because this was on the top and the light is under the button, I didn't even think to look until I was doing my final quality control check. And then I thought, oh, maybe I just put the cable on wrong. You know, maybe it's not fully seated or I knocked it loose because it's so tight with the hard drive cage. No. So there's just more and more time just to verify exactly what is wrong. And it wasn't me. In this case, it wasn't me. All right, let's just get this out of the way for now so we can get that packaged up later. And if I never see another one of these again, it'll be a day too soon. I'll just put it over here. Let me show you the Cougar, the MX330. Now, I've never seen one of these before either. However, in my past experience with the Cougar brand, I've been very impressed. I think they give you a lot for your money. Now, this case has a full-side glass panel instead of that cheap plastic. The material is still not as good or as thick as the name brands, but it's better than that. So we're just going like one step up, I think. It's full-size ATX case, just like before, quite a bit taller, which means the space between the bottom of the board and the power supply, they're not going to butt up against each other because you got more height here. If you look, we have a power supply shroud. That's going to give us a place to hide all our cabling. We even have a tall enough case that we could add liquid cooling to this without a problem. We could not have done that without a challenge on the other case. So this is more user serviceable in that way. This top screen appears to be magnetic. All right, so if you put, say you put fans up here. If those fans are exhausting air, you're going to leave this out. This is a filter. You don't filter exhaust air. If you put fans up here and they're drawing air in, then you want this on. If you put fans up here, don't put your motherboard box or whatever on top and then suffocate your fans. So ideally, don't put any fans on the top of your case. If you end up putting fans on the top of your case, be aware that by placing anything on top of your case, you're blocking the fans. Your CPU could overheat in the case of liquid cooler fans. This case also has room for a big liquid cooler up front. That would make more sense. That way, if you're like most people, you put stuff on top of your computer. This would be a bad idea. We're not putting fans on the top of the case, so that won't be an issue. But you can. Coming around to the underside, what do we have for filters? Is it going to be the same deal? Is it easily removable, or is it one of those cheap, figure it out yourselves? Oh, it's a cheap figure it out yourself. However, at least it's smaller. When they're bigger, they're harder to align. You're still going to have to set this on its side to get to this. There does seem to be a little tab here to grab it at least, and you can pull it away. Remember, this is just a raw screen with no frame to secure its formation. So you do want to clean this from time to time. On a more expensive case, this is going to slide right out. On the cheaper cases, and this still qualifies as a cheaper case, as all Cougar cases do, you're going to run into some, you'll see these cutouts are there to make room for those screws. You've got the punch outs on the bottom, just like the other case, so you've got to kind of bend this around and shift it and move it and bend it, and then make sure you double check that you're underneath all of those. If you're not underneath all of those, what's going to happen is the air and the dust are going to get into the gaps. And so this is still working, but maybe only 75% or 60% effective, depending on how big those gaps are, where the air goes right around it. You might as well just take it off and not use it. Depending on, are you going to service that? Because if you're not, you might as well take it off. Because honestly, you can blow air through your power supply a lot easier than this. If this is important to you, pay attention before you buy the case. Maybe look at some YouTube review videos or pull up the case manual from the manufacturer's website to see how the screens come out. I live in a very dusty environment, and it's critical that those are dusted regularly, at least twice a year. And if it's discouraging to do, you probably aren't going to do it. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. And then you're going to have an overheating problem because you will have suffocated the power supply. It will overheat because it can't breathe. And then you're going to need to buy a new power supply. Or you might say, this darn power supply is a piece of junk. I'm going to send it in for warranty. And it's quite possible they'll warranty it. It depends on if they can determine the cause of failure. Something else I'm noticing about this case that's weird is it's almost like the glass panel was an afterthought. The glass panel sticks out right here. There's an edge of the glass all the way around. The edge, so here's the end of the case, and now here's the glass. The glass does not sit into the case, it sits outside. So if you look closely, you'll see the glass edge going all the way down. That's the sign of a cheap case because the glass does not conform to the case, and the case does not conform to the glass. They simply took a straight piece of glass and a straight edge of a case, and they pushed them together with screws. That's all this is. There's no more thought than that went into it. The glass has not been customized to fit the case, and the case has not been customized to fit the glass. What they did is very simple. They said instead of making a metal panel, custom stamp a metal panel that would slide in, let's just glue a metal frame onto this straight piece of glass. And that's how you're going to secure it. So we removed these thumb screws. Now these are plastic thumb screws, not even the good metal thumb screws that we had on the other case. You see others pros and cons, right? I suppose a screw is a screw, but these little cheap plastic ones really bug me. There's one. I want to keep these separate because these have to be returned. So we're not going to reuse those. Those got to go back. So check this out. This is all they did. They took a piece of glass, right? It's got a black border or painted onto it. And then they glued. This is glued. This piece here and this piece here. Now this would normally be one piece of metal that a machine stamps out that would slide in here. So this was a very easy modification to say it's got glass now, so it costs more. This is a profit-raising item. It's good glass, it's tempered glass, it's not plastic like we saw in the other case. But it's also frameless and clearly has no custom design to it. When we looked at like the John's bow with the curved glass, that's custom made glass. That's there designed to fit a custom made case. This is more of a generic case with a generic piece of glass. It works, but it's clearly not as much thought went into it. For me, I don't like it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's just understanding, why do certain things cost certain amounts of money? Well, because what you're buying is different. And the things that you're buying may not be important to you. You're like, well, I don't need that anyway. I don't care. I'd rather save the money. Okay, just know that's why it's costing you less. In our case, we don't have a lot of choice. When we're looking for cases that will still support a 5¼ inch external drive, our choices are very limited. I'm going to take this other panel off, and I just want to look at the front and figure out what the heck is going on here. I see there are 2 brackets here for mounting something here and mounting something here, but it sure looks like you could mount something up here and here. But this piece here is a cover, and the reason it's a cover is because if you look inside the case, I'm not quite sure how you can see this. If you look in here, you see how it's arched. It goes around like that. That's for the fan. And that's blocking access to what could have been a 5¼ inch bay here. So instead, your 5¼ inch bay is here. And that's the only one you get. And then you can take your optical drive and you can slide it in there, right? And that's going to align right into this slot so you can secure it with the screws that the case includes. But doesn't that look like there's supposed to be a space here for another drive? We were this close. It could have happened if they designed it. They gave priority to the fans. They gave priority to the potential of a liquid cooler. I believe that's why they did it. There's more money to be made in that. Planet Cryos with a $5 super chat said, I was scrolling and I found a YouTube tech channel by the name of CareyHolzman, so I decided to watch. That's a rad dude with PC stuff. I like that guy. That guy gets it. Thank you, Planet Cryos.
That was cute.
Peter VZ with a €2 super chat says, for the support. Right on. Thank you, Peter, joining us from the Netherlands.
Thank you, Planet Cryos. That was a nice comment.
I'm looking through the chat room to see what else I've missed here. David Graham with a $5 super chat says, couldn't think of anything to say, but you're great. Thanks. It's kind of you, David. Thank you. Trevor Dunn said he's verified what we've told about the YouTube memory leak, that Firefox does, in fact, do the same thing where it just starts building up memory in that tab when a super chat is triggered. Interesting that super chat is triggering it, not just... So the chat is causing it, but when there are a lot of emojis or super chats, it seems to increase it exponentially. And this is explained on the script, by the way, what it's doing and why it's speeding things up. Picard says that's a good case for my Intel E8600 CPU. Truer words have never been spoken. Chris McGraw said Fantex has an N through Pro series that's $107 on Newegg, and it would have solved your problems with this one you got. Let's take a look at it. I'm curious. Why not add more delays and just start shipping everything back? I mean, why don't we just do this from now on? We won't get anywhere, but we sure will spin our wheels and keep ourselves busy. Let's take a look at the Fantex N through Pro series. I'm curious. Fantex N through Pro series. See, the old streaming computer I had, that was a Fantex case. And which one did you say? It was the Oh, I think he's talking about this one right here. I see it for 109. Oh, that's from Fantex. Okay, let me show you what I think he's talking about. I don't see a model number. It just says N through Pro, and it shows 109.99, and it looks like this. Okay, that's not working. Hold on. Yeah, that looks like it would have been great. It looks like you've got one large fan in the front, 4 bays, a fan in the back. It's a plastic window, but it's not that big of a deal. It's probably better built because it's Fantex. You've got 2 USB 3s and a Type C. That's perfect. I'm not a big fan of this door. Those always break. So the same situation as in this case where that top, it looks like it holds 4 drives, right? But this top one up here has a little open thing. So that's a little door with your control panel behind it. That kind of sucks. That's a bit of a deal killer for me. It can be very difficult to plug things in to the USB, depending on the size of the plug with the big door in your way. And these doors always break, always. They would have been better off just taking the door. If I was building this, I'd just go ahead and break the door in advance because I think it looks fine without it, rather than hiding the ports. I'm gonna cover these ports up that you're gonna need. I don't see the point in doing that. I mean, give me the ports or don't. We certainly don't need, so again, this is an awfully drive-heavy cage. I really don't think we need that much. This feels a bit like a server box. But, see, the problem is when you get a case like this, you see all these drives, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's no room to cable all 6 drives. And when you give customers this much expansion, they want to use it. And if you don't give it to them, they won't. My big fear is that the customer will start using these and it's going to draw more power. It's going to be hard to cable manage. You're going to run out of SATA ports and you're going to generate a lot more heat with unreliable drives that probably should be retired. If this had 2, I'd be okay. But the fact it's got 6, this looks like a support potential to be very, very, very difficult. On top of that, cable management in here looks very narrow. It looks like we've got a fan controller here that may add to the cable management difficulties of getting that back panel back in place. You'll notice some back panels are bowed in the center, and they do that to make room for the cables behind them. But these panels are completely flat. They're flat and flush. That means everything behind that panel is going to get squished up against the back of the motherboard tray. So I gotta say initially, I think I could see what you were saying, but as we look a little closer, this would be a worse choice for numerous reasons. It's also more money, which I would, again, wouldn't be that big of a deal. It's not that much more, but it's still giving us a lot of the same problems. And the more you can add into the case, if the case says, yeah, you can add all this stuff, well, good luck figuring out how you're going to wire that all. Now, I suppose if you got rid of the case window, if you could get it without this case window, you could just throw the cabling wherever. But since you do have a case window, any additional cables that you can't fit behind the motherboard tray are going to be perfectly visible, destroying any sort of aesthetic you were looking for. So again, there's a lot to be considered here. It seems like it's probably better built overall, just not as well. It doesn't seem like it's any better thought out. But I mean, just the idea those USB ports are hidden behind a door there, that's enough for me to say no thanks. I mean, is our power light and everything else under there? Where's our power light at? How do I know if it's on? Where's that at? Is it at the top? And if so, why aren't they all put together? I can't see. All right, thank you for the suggestion. That's not going to work. I appreciate it, though. Let's go back over to camera one. You're still better off with this case. Compared to those two, this one's the better choice. Better value. In my opinion. Now, somewhere in here, we're going to have a box of screws that comes with the case. It's often located in the drive tray, the drive cage. This motherboard appears to have, or this case rather, appears to have a drive cage that only holds one 3.5-inch drive, at least inside of it. Maybe one more fits on top of it. Richard's not using any hard drives, so he won't use this at all. What an extreme difference from having 6 on one case to 1 on this one. And I would like to discourage customers from putting hard drives in their computers nowadays. Put solid state drives in. Put your hard drives externally. It's not like they're going to run any slower. If you've got a big, spacious case and lots of good cable management, knock yourself out. You know, some of the Be Quiet cases make it real easy to add drives and hide the cabling. Most of those cases are going to be at or around $200. That's all there is in there. I like how they put a baggie in the box that was in the case that was in the box. They've given us a couple of extra standoffs. They're brass. They didn't even bother to paint them to match the case. I guess it doesn't matter because, you know, again, once you put your motherboard in place, you're not going to see them anyway. If you're used to dealing with higher end stuff, not really expensive, just one step better, stuff like this, the nicer cases, which may even sell for less money than like that Fantex, not only have the standoffs pre-installed, which the if you recall, the Fractal Design case, we had to put all the standoffs in ourselves. Now, with the Cougar case, the standoffs are pre-installed for a micro ATX board, but not for a full ATX board, even though it's a full ATX case. That's not normal. That is not normal. And there is no center post to help you align the motherboard, so that means you've got to do it all by hand. And that also means we're going to have to add 3 more standoffs in the positions for ATX, which explains why there are 3 more standoffs in the bag. Do it yourself, I guess, is the attitude. You want a DIY? Then DIY. You want black standoffs? Get some nail polish. You got other things to do. How cheap you want this? I see we have room for a 2.5-inch drive to go right here. This can be removed. Again, we don't have a lot of space for cable management back here. It's pretty narrow, but it's about twice the space we had with the Fractal Design, which is still, at least we've got the space down here. That's just probably what I'll end up using. Because trying to compress like the big, thick power supply cable into this narrow space is barely going to fit. Some other cases you'll see are recessed along this area, and that allows you to route your cables into a much deeper recess, hidden away from the front, and at the same time you're not struggling to put the back on. This is not a Ziploc. We have to cut this open. And I'm going to need my 5mm socket to put those standoffs in. So here's what I'll do. We'll grab some skizzers and we're going to trade places here. We're going to take these out because we're going to need these installed in the case. And then because this can be resealed, we'll take this bag and dump it in there. And now that's trash. That way we can hold on to the extra screws and reuse this bag, keep it out of the landfill, and, you know, everybody wins. So don't let me forget, I want to secure this drive in before it falls out. So we'll do this first, secure the drive in second, and then power supply and motherboard can go in, plug it back in, it's done. It's a very simple process, which would have been simpler if this is done for us already. Now some people say, well, I don't understand why it's such a big deal if it's such a quick process. Well, that's because you're not working at scale, right? You're not saying, hey, Joe, I don't get it. It's a weird name. I need you to build 10 of these for me today in the next 8 hours. I need it done now. And I don't want you going home until it's done. And I'm not paying you overtime. And so every additional little thing that you have to do that in other cases you don't have to do are eating into your time and are limiting how much you're going to get done today. When you're just building one and you're building it for fun and you're not watching the clock and you're not building it for somebody else who's waiting on you, you might enjoy doing the extra work. But if you're trying to build at scale, every additional thing that you are having to do extra because you're sourcing a cheaper case is costing you more in labor. That's also more that could potentially go wrong if I were to over tighten one of these or the threads aren't right. Then that means we have to deal with a problem now that we would have not had to deal with. And we might just be on build number 1 of 8. Now, typically the first one you do will be slower. The second one will be a little faster. The third one, fourth one, you'll get better and better as long as the parts stay the same. But it's still, you're doing more work. And that means you're going to get less done. And if you're not running a business doing this, then who cares? But I am, and I do. That's why. That's the logic. We're going to grab a couple of these fine threaded screws here. These are often used to install the optical drive and solid state drives. Typically use these same little screws. Now what's interesting on this case design is they only allow us to secure the drive in one place here. In most cases, especially back in the day, this piece was as long as the drive, remember? And you could put 2 screws here and 2 screws here. And they said, well, you don't need that. That's going to cost more money in material. Then we're going to have to charge you more for the case. So what they did on the other side, which you can see there, is they've given us the full length on the back panel. They just punched it out with a machine. So you get that added support here, because otherwise, and that's good enough, by the way. Apparently that was the thought process. What's good and what's good enough? And this follows under good enough, right? Because you don't, without having that 4th screw, you're going to have some play in there. It's not going to hurt anything. But it's also nowhere near as secure, especially if you're building a lot of machines and they're going to be shipped all over. You need them to survive shipping. This is not a big deal. It's just a cost-saving measure. And it explains how they can get the costs down, right? Because they're using less material. It's built faster. And it's built to sell a lot of units, right? They're making up for quantity, for their quality. They're exchanging that for quantity. If we can sell it cheaper, we can sell more of them. If we sell it better, we have to raise the price and we won't sell as many. So that means if we won't sell as many, we have to raise the price to make up the difference of the profit margin we'd have to make it worth our while to sell it to begin with, which raises the price even more, which makes the cheaper case look even more appealing. And you know what, for the price difference, I don't mind tolerating that. The problem is a lot of people don't know what they're going to be having to tolerate until they get it at home. So that's the problem, is the unknown. You'll also, if you're paying attention, you'll see they've got little cutouts. Once again, it's just machine stamped. They've cut a hole so you can get the screwdriver in there to get to that screw. And they've done that on both sides. This is a minor thing. It doesn't really add to the cost to punch that. But the fact that they did it, thank you. Appreciate that. But now that drive, that's in there, it ain't going nowhere. We can put our I/O shield back in. Now this rear fan power cable is getting in the way of the I/O shield, and I can see it. Again, something cheaper cases will have a problem with. This cable is very taut, it's very tight. So I have to either remove the fan or remove the cable or hold it with one hand while trying to install the I/O shield with my other hand. And if you've installed an I/O shield before, you probably have trouble doing it with two hands. Well, you're going to have to do it with one now, unless you take this fan out or undo this cable that's the fan power, which we'll probably do anyway, but we might have to do it right now. The other issue I'm running into is when I put the I/O shield in here, yeah, I'm still catching the very top corner of the fan power. If we pinch that and break through the insulation, it creates a short circuit that could potentially short out the entire system. This is not a joke. It shouldn't be taken lightly. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this fan cable so I can, I mean, it's probably got to come off of here anyway. They just tied it up so it didn't flop around in shipping. It wasn't really meant to run the route they put it. All right, they just did that because they just didn't want it to make a lot of slapping sounds, you know, inside of the case, or potentially cause damage, right? When these things get dropped by the shippers, then the distribution centers, these little plastic ends get slapped against the glass or whatever, it can mar it up. So with that, we can drape it over the top, and then that should keep it. Actually, we got to drape it this way. I need this cable to go the other way. Now let me try and put my I/O shield back in. So we need to start at either the top or the bottom. This is a friction fit, and it should snap into place when you have it properly aligned. And you should check all four edges to make sure all four edges are seated all the way in. If not, it's going to look weird. Not that anybody looks back here. And your motherboard may be a little more difficult to put in because you didn't take the time to make sure that all four sides were fully flush against the case. I've seen that so many times where the customers are just too impatient. They slap in 3/4 of it and then the other quarter's not even attached. And then they wonder why it was hard to get the motherboard in. Pretty light case. We'll grab the motherboard and we'll go ahead and place that in. Once again, this fan power cable might have behooved me to take that fan out. I'm just trying to be efficient. And I don't want to do the extra work. We got to watch that grounding strap on the I/O shield so that it doesn't fold under and block our RJ45 port. Now, without a center point to lock this board down, this board moves all over the place. And again, I don't know which of these screws is for the standoff, and I don't have any extra standoffs to test because I didn't think of that before I put the standoffs in. Even after all these years, I still keep making that same error. Now, there's a couple of choices here. All the screws are just slapped together in one bag. So, good luck. Oh, wait a minute. Explain this. So we've got brass standoffs, and in the bag they've given us one painted black standoff. What is this for? Why is this a different color than all the other ones? Why is it not brass and all the other ones are brass in color? Oh, wait, there's another one. Okay, now we have two black standoffs. Three black standoffs. Why? Why were there 3 brass and 3 black ones? Now, if I had 9 black ones, I could switch them all out. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with those. This little silver one here, this is the socket. So if you don't have a 5mm socket to tighten these little bad boys down, this fits into the socket, and then you can turn the socket with a regular Phillips screwdriver on that end. You can always save this and use it on other things. So now I'm imagining that these standoffs use the same screws as those standoffs, but they might not. If I had to guess which screw locks this board down, and apparently I have to guess, it could be those screws that are typically used with SSDs, or it could be the case screws. I don't see a coarse thread short screw other than those case screws. There's an abundance of these little fine threaded, screws that I used for the optical drive. Some cases will use those for your motherboard securing and others don't. And the way you can tell is to just test fit it. Well, it does feel right. So let's see if the brass ones are the same thread. They may not be. There may be a reason why one is one color and one is another color. Well, there's definitely a reason. I just don't know what it is yet. Now, if the screw won't tighten, then it's going to be a coarser thread screw. This board is moving all over the place without anything to hold it in. Well, I've got to say, nothing appears to be locking in. It looks like the screw just spins, which would suggest that the finer thread screw is not the right screw. But also, the board's not moved up far enough, and I don't know why yet. Oh, there it goes. Okay, let me just try it one more time. Oh, that locked in. So, okay, it is the finer thread screw. I just didn't have it. The board was angled. It wasn't completely straight and narrow. So even though I was under the standoff, it was a little off kilter in the sense that I had locked in one standoff straight, but the other standoffs could not be seen through the holes entirely. So the motherboard was tilted. Therefore, the screw, even though it appeared to be going in straight, was going in tilted, and that's why it wasn't biting into the standoff. This is a problem that can be easily avoided by the manufacturer, including a standoff in the middle that's a post that you don't screw into. That holds the board in position for you. When they don't do that, it's like we're going back in time for, this is how we used to put boards in. And prior to this, we used to use the little plastic standoffs with just 2 screws. All the other ones were just slotted plastic nylon standoffs that would go just to support the board. Boy, those were the days. Just 2 screws. Of course, getting the nylon standoffs off sometimes was a hassle. There are some short course ones in here now. I'm glad I didn't see them earlier because I probably would have started with those. And those won't even begin to turn inside of those motherboard standoffs. How many we got left? 1, 2, 3. 3 more to go. Should be a total of 9. Okay, it's not too bad. Looks like there's room here for another 2.5-inch drive. Potentially, maybe even possibly another 2.5-inch drive in exchange for the SATA. I really want to recommend people just stop using SATA cable. If you've got a SATA drive, use it externally. This would be a one exception where I get it because I'm not aware of any other way to connect an optical drive. But I'm also not aware of many cases that will even take optical drives anymore. But when it comes to internal hard drives, you know, if you've got an older case and older drives and an older system, that makes sense. But when you've got a newer system with older stuff, you're just holding yourself back and you're increasing your odds of experiencing some sort of trouble, right? Because as the parts age, they become more likely to fail. Not only that, but the SATA cables are one of the slowest input outputs when we talk about people talking about overclocking and XMP, and they wanted to, you know, and then why are you using slow storage? Well, because I have it. Well, that's just self-punish. I'm going to eat this food with mold on it. You know, I mean, it's just doing it to yourself. You'd be saving a lot of money in hospital bills if you just threw it away. You want to talk about wasting money? That ain't nothing compared to the hospital bill. Unless you live in a country with free health care, which is like pretty much any industrialized country but the United States, in which case maybe you enjoy the opportunity to visit your nearby hospital. But nonetheless, choose your path. All right, so these can go back into our bag here. And the other thing I don't want to confuse are these these thumb screws that hold the panels on. Let's just go ahead and put these back in the box now. And let's, if we have screws in here, which we do, why do I have two separate bags? I guess that's how, both those bags need to go back along with the instructions to the Fractal case. So we're going to take this and this and this. Yeah, this all went to the Fractal case. And before I lose it, and before I mix up what went with what, we're going to just nip this in the bud right now. And we'll put all of this on top of the case so that when it gets packed back up, this will all be included in the box, and the manufacturer won't tell us they didn't get everything back, so you're not going to get all your money back. Again, if it was going back to Amazon, it likely wouldn't be a problem, but it's because it's going back to a third-party seller, we just don't know how strict they will be on their returns. So let me just move that now before I misplace it, and we'll keep it all together. All right. Now there is a power supply shroud here, which is, as I mentioned, a great opportunity to hide our cabling. I can also see that when it comes to hooking up that audio cable that I had to take the power supply out, we have all of these access points down here, these wiring holes that we can run our cables up to the bottom of the board for things like front USB, front audio, without interfering with the top of the power supply. And then we have all that cable management room all throughout here that we can use instead of trying to force everything back in this area. I mean, at some point, those cables still have to run down, right? But as soon as you have to sort of fold them up and take up the slack, that's when you start doubling the thickness of the cable, and that's when you start having problems with getting the panels back on, unless they give you ample cable management room, which they didn't do other than just down here. And how much room you have down here is going to vary depending on, for example, if you wanted to put a liquid cooler in this up at the front, you could certainly have done that, and that's why there's a cutout in the power supply shroud right here, so you can run your radiator down there. Or if you had a graphics card in here and you needed to provide power to your graphics card, you could run the power cable either out of this hole here, right back here to the back of the card, or if your card was shorter, you could actually take it up through one of the two holes I showed you just a moment ago. When it comes to that rear case fan with that power cable dangling out of there, we do have a fan power header right up on the top left of the motherboard. And if we plug that in, it's just a matter of later cleaning the cable up. So, or did I imagine it? Maybe there isn't one there. There's two ways we can run this power cable. First, we can run it out here, right? So we don't see it inside of the case. Then the second thing is, do we have a fan header across the top of the board or across the bottom that this will reach? Because this is included with the case, you would hope the case manufacturer kept that in mind. They don't always do. So for me to hook this fan up, I would take this cable right here and I would run it down. See if I can get it through here. It's only a 3-pin fan. It's not a 4-pin fan. And I literally have 2 fan headers down here, which would be very far to go from the front all the way back there. But for the rear fan just to come out and back, it hides the cable. You almost don't see it at all. And then we don't have a lot of excess back here. This won't get in the way of the panel. This is super, super easy. Too bad, unlike NZXT, they don't give us a track to run that down, but it's not terrible. We've got our front port umbilicals here, right? So we've got our front USB 2, USB 3.1, USB 3, audio, and power switch, reset switch, power LED, and hard drive LED. A lot of new cases don't come with reset switches anymore. Some of them don't come with hard drive LEDs anymore. Some of them don't come with power LEDs anymore. Why? If you got RGB, what do you need a power light for? So I've seen that on some pretty nice cases where it's like, why did they take away my lights that actually did something purposeful to give me lights that don't do anything meaningful? And if you've been watching the channel for a while, you've seen me complain about that. Like, how does this make any sense? It has too much RGB now? No one's ever, very rarely has anybody ever said this has too much RGB. I can't believe how that power light is distracting from my random lights. Seems like a weird complaint. This is our USB 2. And we have a couple of USB 2 headers on the bottom of the board. That's usually where you're going to locate them. They may be that you only have one. You could have more than one. They're going to be labeled 1 and 2. It doesn't matter which one you use. So that's going to go right down there. Then we've got, let's see, the front port switches and LEDs. That can go right up through the same hole here. Right through there. You guys can see that. These always go on the same orientation on all ATX and micro ATX boards. You always put these switches on and these LEDs on horizontally. They always sit flat. You never put them on up and down. You do not connect 2 rows of pins. You go on 1 row sideways, straight across flat, and you go on the other row straight across and flat. You never connect the top row and the bottom row. It's very simple. I like to start with the hard drive LED, which is at the bottom row, because if I do the top row first, I can't see the bottom row. And I do need a little bit of light because it's dark. So hard drive LED, and then beside the hard drive LED, the reset switch. The reset switch, anything that's a switch does not have it might say positive and negative on it. It doesn't actually have one. So don't worry about that. Just plug it in the right connector. There is no such thing as upside down. But with an LED, you must get the positive cable on the positive connector, or the LED will not light up if you wire it backwards. It won't hurt it, it just won't light up. Which is kind of the whole point of having an LED, last I checked. Basically, if you turn your computer on and your power LED or your hard drive LED are not coming on, first thing I would do if I were you is make sure you set them on the right set of pins, that they're fully seated, and if the whole positive negative thing confuses you, just switch it around and put negative on positive, whatever. Just put the cables on the opposite sides, change places. If you're wrong, it won't hurt it. And if you're right, problem solved and get on with life. I'm going to put the power LED on next. I saved that one for last because it's at the top far end, which is easiest for me to get to once everything else is in place. If I started the other way around, I wouldn't be able to see anything underneath like the hard drive LED. And that's it. Oh, there's one more thing, right? USB Type-C, that's our USB-C cable. This motherboard does support that. It's usually right near the other USB cable. And we'll plug that one on. There we go. Finally, we can put the power supply in and we can turn this on. We don't have to reactivate Windows. We didn't change anything but the case. So we don't have to reinstall any drivers or reactivate Windows. None of that matters. We just changed the little house. Oh, front port audio. I almost forgot front port audio. There's a lot of headers on here. Let's go, which way do we want to go with this? Trying to think if I want this cable to loop inside of the other one or outside. I'm going to say outside. There's a missing pin on the top row. Sometimes it's on the bottom row. And we just turn the connector to whatever way accommodates our motherboard. And it just pushes on. Sometimes people only get one row of pins and they can't see underneath to see they missed the whole second row. So if your front port audio doesn't work, just pull that cable off, reseat it again. When you're trying to look at it and figure it out, you'll never see it. Cut to the chase. Just take it off, reseat it. You'll probably get it right the second time. And then the power supply that we had before, we're just going to put that right back in here. And that's going to sit right underneath like so. And the shallowness of this power supply, one of the things I like is how shallow it is. It doesn't go as far back, and that gives us more room for our cables to get tucked in under there. Now to put the power supply in, I'm sure the power supply came with its own cables that I just ended up putting with the case, but came with its own screws. It doesn't matter. These black case screws are so common, I don't care. We'll just use the ones this case came with. So the seller is going to get 4 extra power supply screws. Who cares? They won't even notice. Hey, you gave us back too much. They never said. When you're working with a power supply shroud, it can be very difficult to put the power supply in when you have nothing to grab on this side to align the power supply. I do like it, the higher end cases where the shrouds come off, and then you can access it, put the shroud back on. Not a deal killer. Again, if you got to do 10 of these, and you got to do it in a certain time frame, and this is going to take you a little bit more time, just plan accordingly, or maybe you don't care. Some of the nicer cases also have a removable frame back here, and you take the frame off, attach it to the power supply, and then slide the power supply in. It's way easier. In an environment where you're working on a lot of machines and you want to work on them quickly, doesn't get any more efficient than that. You get that with a modular power supply. You can switch a power supply out in under 4 minutes flat. Move on to your next job. Okay, so our big 24-pin power connector, that's going to go, let's see, how do I want to route this? Maybe like, yeah, well, see, we're going to run into a little bit of issue with the back of the optical drive, with where the cables are going to stick out. So I got to keep that in mind as I'm putting this in. If I want to come in from the top and drop down, or come in from below and go up. I think I'll be okay coming in from the top. I don't want to crowd one wire management hole. I'd like to kind of even them out a little bit. And I think once it's tensioned and wire managed, we should be free and clear back here behind the optical drive and have plenty of room. It's just in the initial sort of figuring it out, first thing I noticed was that's in the way. But once it's installed, it'll probably be fine. Concerns like this certainly don't become a concern when you're working on the same case with the same parts. But when you're doing it just once and you never see it again, it's like anything goes. Is it going to be okay? Or, let's see. In this situation, it looks like we're fine. Okay, yeah, we're going to be okay. If you look at the back, the cable does kind of come up, kind of interferes a little bit with the back here. But I think we can probably work around that, and that gives us plenty of room right there. Because remember, we're going to have to route another power cable up here to the back of the optical. Every time you add a SATA drive, you've got to run that power cable. And every time you run the power cable, you got to think about, how am I going to route that? Is there room for it? The case might have room to hold the drive, but does the case have room to hold all the cables? And do you want to do all the added cable management? And if you do, and you don't mind, and have fun, with NVMe drives, you know, you just slap it in. There's no cables involved whatsoever. It's much cleaner, faster, easier, and more reliable. I don't know why. Well, I guess, is it more reliable? You never have to deal with a bad cable. But the solid-state technology between an NVMe and a regular SSD drive are probably very similar outside of the controller. Still, the NVMe drives are cheaper. I know that doesn't sound right. Why would the drive that's 4 times faster be less expensive? Supply and demand, I guess. So we've got our 12-volt CPU power here, EPS power, which I think I want to route. Again, I'm just trying to figure out how to weave the cables so the cable management later will be easier on me. Because if it isn't, I'll be unplugging them and rerouting them, and I don't want to do that. I'd rather route it right the first time. And then we're going to go on this first connector right up here. We have a lot of room to get up in this top corner. If this was a Corsair 200R, I'd be cursing right now. Because the Corsair 200R is about 2 inches shorter. My single favorite case to work on for efficiency, cleanliness, capabilities, quality, NZXT-H7, dead on, one of the best cases I've ever worked on. Unfortunately though, it's not good for a business because it's got that big glass side panel, and it also does not have any front bays. I don't think any NZXT computers have front bays. So for this customer, that would not be a good solution. Even though it's a good case, it just wouldn't be a good solution in this scenario. Let's go ahead and plug it in. Let's make sure we didn't break anything. So I'll grab my cables here on the floor. Whatever I grab first is what I'll plug it in. There's Ethernet. Here's HDMI. I need a power cable. And I need a keyboard and a mouse. Flip the power supply on. We're going to test one of our USB ports up here. Turn the keyboard on. Hit the power button. Power light lit up. Let's go to our input. You can see everything's lighting up inside the case. And it's loading. As it's loading, do I see the hard drive LED blinking? I do. The hard drive LED is red and it flashes on and off. Anytime the NVMe drive, what I'm calling the hard drive, anytime that reads or writes, that light turns on and off, and that's red. And then the power light right beside the power button, instead of underneath of it where I couldn't see it, is blue and functional. The lights are also not as bright as that other case. And our front USB is working. Our rear case fan is working. We still have to hook up the optical drive, which is just one SATA cable and one SATA power, one SATA data and one SATA power cable. And then we've got the customer's 2 additional NVMe drives to put in. And that's it. Again, a pretty simple job. It's just doing a simple job 3 times versus doing it once. Well, I guess we're only doing it the second time, but nonetheless, I would have liked to have gotten it right the first time. It's not like it's not like I'm a beginner, right? If I am, I'm a very old beginner. Anyway, there we go. That's what it all looks like, and that's what it should have been, I guess, from the beginning. What a shame he can't use the other optical drive inside this giant case that definitely has room for it. They could have even put it down below this one, but they were prioritizing instead for a cooler, because that's where the money is, I guess. More people want front coolers than want front optical drives. And such is the way things go as we continue moving forward. This may be one of the last cases we see here that's new on this channel where we are putting an optical drive in, because I just don't think you're going to be able to buy them by this time next year. I'm sure they'll be gone. You'll have to be on eBay or buying something used. The good news is they do sell portable USB powered Blu-ray and DVD drives. And if they're hooked up to a good USB port, you know, if you got a good motherboard, they should work the same. There shouldn't be any difference. But, I mean, this is sort of the consequence of when you've gotten familiar with something and then that something goes away, it's tough. If you never, like if you were just getting started into computers in the last few years, this would never be a situation you'd find yourself in for at least another 10 or 15 years. Then there'll be something that you like that they don't make anymore, and you'll be like, yeah, this thing's fine. Why don't they do this? Culture's weird that way. All right, let me just jump back into the chat real quick, and we'll say our goodbyes. Thank you to everybody for hanging out with us. David Graham with a $2 super chat says, forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. I agree. Thank you for the super chat and the wise words of wisdom. Just trying to catch up here on the discussions that's been taking place while my attention's been over here. Sir, 36 Bounce says, can you please show how to update the BIOS on an ASRock Z690 so it will be compatible with an i5-14500? How you update the BIOS on a board is determined by whether or not you have a CPU that works now. So if you had an ASRock Z690 with an 12 or 13th gen CPU. All you have to do is update the BIOS the way I show you on any of my previous videos. If you're building a brand new system on a motherboard you've never used before, and it's a Z690 with a 14500, the BIOS should already be updated from the factory unless you bought an old motherboard. So then how would you update the BIOS on a system that won't boot? Because you need the system to boot to update the BIOS, unless your motherboard has something called BIOS flashback. We've demonstrated BIOS flashback on many different boards. It's typically only on the more expensive boards. And the best recommendation I can have for you is to Google search or YouTube search, because you're asking me to make a video that probably 25 other people have already made. I've seen Mike's unboxing reviews and how-to demonstrate this, but unless I have the board you're talking about in front of me, I don't live inside of a Newegg warehouse where I can just pick any part you want me to test. All I have are the limited inventory that we've demonstrated here on the channel recently. And anything that's over a year ago, I probably still don't have it, or it's sitting somewhere collecting dust, and it would be very difficult for me to open every case and figure out which one, if any of them, have that particular board. But since that content is not new, and since many other people have already done it, it would be very easy for you to just type that into YouTube. I think Mike's unboxing reviews and how-to has already demonstrated this. If your motherboard does not have a BIOS flashback button, you will have to borrow a CPU from somebody. Or you can return the motherboard. But if the motherboard's brand new, and if the chip is brand new, then the motherboard should already have been updated long before at the factory. It's not like the 14th gen just came out the other day. This is typically a problem that exists when you're buying something used, in the case of the motherboard, or the processor literally just came out like within weeks, because motherboard inventories, they're not as plentiful as they used to be. They sell out rather quickly, so they're always having to be replenished. Whatever the latest BIOS version is at the time of manufacture is what BIOS your motherboard comes with. You should not need to update your motherboard BIOS unless you bought the board used or a couple of years ago for the purpose of using it within a 12th or 13th gen. In which case, you would just follow the instructions using your previous CPU to update the BIOS, which you should have been doing anyway, because I keep telling you to do it so you don't have to do it. And now you find yourself in a position, I guess, you think you have to do it, or do you know you have to do it? Have you even tried to start up the machine and it's not booting, and now you're making the assumption? Like, how did you assert this conclusion you needed a BIOS update? Is it just your imagination? Did you make an attempt? Are you making assumptions? How did we get to this question? I can be more useful when I understand where we're at and why we're asking it. Frankie B joins us and says hello. Welcome in, Frankie. Great supporter of the channel. Frankie's got a couple of the mini PCs. I haven't heard anything bad. I assume those are working well for you, Frankie. Martin says the Phillips sockets for the little 5mm standoffs suck. You know what sucks worse is having nothing and trying to use a pair of pliers. Please don't use pliers on those. You leave metal shavings all over your case. You score them up. Not the plier, you score up the standoffs. And then that could cause a problem later on. And it's just hacky. It's like broadcasting to the world, I don't know what I'm doing. So at least if you have the little socket, you have no excuse. In my case, I have a lot of tools, so I also do this for a living. So I wouldn't do it for a living and do it like that. So it could be worse, that's all I'm saying. Oh, my YouTube studio crashed. Phil Stodd said, I just literally watched Mike's unboxing, review, and how-to. Just literally update an ASRock Z690 BIOS today. The question is, did he use BIOS flashback, or did he use an older processor? And also, why was he doing it? Was it just simply, here's how to do it, with no explanation as to why? Either way, he's very clear and he's very good at what he does. $36 says, I appreciate your advice. I will look and I thank you. It does have BIOS flashback and the board is new. Yeah, so you shouldn't have to do anything. Just pop the chip in, you'll be fine. One of the things, I suppose, that, let's say you're a doctor, okay, and you're used to seeing people that are sick. And you're busy, you're helping sick people. Someone comes up to you and says, doctor, what would happen if, or should I eat this to prevent that? It's really hard if you don't have any symptoms that exist in reality to treat you. If you're building your computer and you're having difficulty in reality, let us know what that difficulty is and we can help you. We'd love to help you. But if you've got anxiety and you're trying to avoid a problem you likely never would have had to begin with, there's nothing we can do but guess and speculate, and it's probably all a big waste of time, because in all likelihood, we're just working on discussing our imaginations. And I would rather, help you in reality. So start your build, and if you have any trouble booting it up, let us know. It may not be a BIOS update that would prevent that. And if you haven't even begun your build yet, There's so many things that can go wrong. I don't know why we're focusing on this one when there's 1,000 others we're not discussing. Likely none of which will even happen. You'll just plug it in and it'll work, negating the whole point of the discussion. So just bear that in mind. We'd love to be able to help you with any actual problems you have. Okay. Phil Stodd said he was watching Mike's unboxing do basic BIOS updating, not that specific board. Okay. Well, again, there are YouTube videos that will show that specific board. They will show the BIOS flashback. That board's been around about 2 years, so that ship sailed and plenty of content creators have been there and done that. There's no shortage. We don't need to recreate what others have already done in mass. And he may not even need to do it. So this whole discussion, we'll move on. Paul1961 said, I'd love a mini PC for the camper. They're just too much money in Canada. Yeah, the real shame of it is that if you, were to buy one in the US, there'd be import fees that would probably result in you paying the same or more as if you just bought it locally, because your government will tax any imported items based on their value. They don't want you to save money by putting your Canadian money into another country. So you're not going to win that way either. But the prices on these things, they just keep going down. Minisforms they had their big Halloween sale going on. Are they still doing that? I don't know when the Halloween sale ended. Plus, you're going to have all the holidays coming up. I realize, Thanksgiving is an American holiday, but, Christmas is pretty well universally recognized around the world. And Canada often follows closely in American holidays, very similar. They're not all shared, but very similar. Let me take a quick look right quick here at the Minisforum page because I know they have a sale going on. And I don't know what your budget is for a mini PC, but they sell for as little as $150 US, which is even less in Canadian, right? Because that's a Canadian dollar is only worth about 73 cents American, something like that. What is 1 Canadian dollar to USD? 72 cents. Man, I was close. 72 cents. So if it's 150 American, 150 American dollars, USD to Canadian, you'd have to have 210 Canadian dollars to be equivalent to 150 American dollars. I don't think it's more expensive for you. I think it's all adjusted accordingly. There may be some import fees, but the US has import fees too for the manufacturers in China. I don't know what those tariffs are, but it's very inexpensive for a brand new computer. If it was Australian dollars, if it was pesos, it might sound like it's a lot of money in pesos, but it still works out pretty much to the same American price, usually, within a couple dollars. It's not like double. There's an illusion if you're comparing American prices to Canadian prices and American dollars to the pound or the euro. I think the pound is worth more than the euro now. I remember when the euro was worth almost $2 American. So it would be very expensive for me to go to Europe when the euro was $2 American for 1 euro or close to it. And now 1 euro is almost $1. It's a little over like $1.09 in US. So now prices are going to be about the same. Taxes will be a little different. What about the pound? I think the British pound is $1.29. So a little more value. But the Canadian dollar and the Australian dollar, the peso, these are all under the American dollar. So the prices are going to accommodate that valuation difference. Should be pretty close. Now there are some countries that was it the Philippines or somewhere? Not the Philippines. The heck is it? If you don't make your stuff in this country, if you're not developing the software, developing the hardware, if there's no investment at their country for the product you're selling, they won't even allow you to sell it. So like an iPhone can't be sold in iPhone, illegal to sell, not to own, illegal to sell in Indonesia. The Indonesian government has blocked Apple from selling its iPhone 16 in the country because it didn't meet local regulations. The latest iPhone launched in September didn't pass the Southeast Asian nation's requirement that 40% of the material in smartphones and tablets sold nationally come from Indonesian producers. Now, if you're traveling to Indonesia, you can bring your phone with you. In fact, you could bring two, no more than two. And in that case, you'd have a different problem on your hands if you were trying to acquire an iPhone and you lived in Indonesia. But in Canada, you don't have those restrictions. Most countries don't have that restriction. But that's how they try and build their own economy for their own people, right? If all their people take all their money and spend it and give it to other countries, what does Indonesia have left but a bunch of people with no income? And other people living in other countries benefiting as they send all their money over there. It's almost, depending on the size of the country, how do you stimulate your own economy? So you have other countries giving you their money to buy stuff that you're making. You've got to incentivize these companies. I'm not sure that's the way to do it, but to each their own. Economics, it's pretty interesting stuff. I'm no expert. I'm fascinated by it. Frankie B says the mini PCs he has there are running great. Right on. Well, I appreciate the update. I assume no news is good news. And you let us know if there's anything we can do for you, Frankie. Richard wants to know, is there a filter in the front of this case? No, there isn't. I don't think there is. I better double check. There kind of is. It's not a traditional filter in the sense that when you have an optical drive installed, you may have difficulty getting the front of the case off on a lot of cases that I've worked with in the past without first taking the optical drive out. Now, we don't have any fans in the front drawing any air in, but we are wide open in here that we can easily get some compressed air in there. And let's see if I can turn this around and blow straight through that. There appears to be a screen right up at the front, in the back of the, how can I phrase this? The back of the front? Right behind this front fascia, there appears to be maybe a mesh screen that's embedded in there. And normally you would just pull these front panels off. Now, when you have all of your ports up here, that's usually pretty easy. If your switches and LEDs are in the front attached to the bezel, then it may restrict the bezel from moving because it's wired in, right? So that's another thing to consider when you're buying a case. Some of the nicer cases, the top of the bezel is U-shaped so that the control panel stays on. The cheaper cases, not so much. And again, you might find difficulty removing this. Because it is plastic, I'm going to suggest you don't make a habit of removing it. The plastic is going to get brittle in a few years' time, and it's just going to break off, even though you did nothing wrong. They're just little plastic clips. They get brittle. The less you use them, unless you have to, obviously you can. But if all you want to do is dust it, there's no reason to remove this. You can simply get your can of compressed air or whatever you're using and spray it right through here, and spray it right through here. I'm not worried even if this whole front were to get clogged. You could, as far as I'm concerned, you could cover the whole front of this up with a towel because there's so many other places for air to get drawn in. Remember, if this needs air, it's going to bring it in like a vacuum. This is not sealed airtight. If we've got glass up against this panel, that's pretty airtight, okay? But if we can get up underneath and air can come in from the bottom, which it can, it's still going to draw enough air in. Our main cooler, or our main area of cooling, there's two places I want you to focus on dusting. That's going to be this fan right here, and the key word is fan. If you see a fan, you want to dust it. If we don't have fans up there, you don't have to worry about it. You can get as dusty as it wants. No one cares. It really doesn't matter. This fan and the heat sink behind it, you need to get in and all around there. There's also a fan in your power supply. You're going to want to, because the power supply is enclosed, it's only got 2 open areas, the back and the bottom. No air is exchanged from or to the case. It's its own enclosed, your power supply is its own case. And it brings air in from the bottom. The bottom is drawing air in, and it's pushing that air out. This whole case could be blocked, and this power supply will be fine. This whole case could be dusted, but you ignored your power supply, and it's suffocating, and it'll kill your whole system. So I would blow air through the power supply where air goes in and out, which is the back and the bottom. I would blow air where this rear fan is, front and back. I would blow air on this fan, front and back. No fans here, nothing to worry about. The minute you add fans, you add more dust. Now you're going to have to dust it. If you don't put any fans in there, which you don't need, you'll save money and you'll save effort. If you put a graphics card in here, then you're going to want to put at least 1 fan here in the middle to blow air over that graphics card. Other than that, don't put any fans in and you won't have any dust to worry about. We've got what is required, and nothing overkill and nothing too low as far as like when you add fans, you're also generating more power, which is generating more heat, which is making your power supply work harder. The fan motors themselves are adding heat to the inside of your case. More fans will end up creating more heat, adding to the cost and adding to the maintenance. You see people that have just all these fans and they're just, I don't know, they only see the world one-dimensionally. It's more complicated than that. They're spending money they don't have to spend to make a situation worse than it was when they started and to increase the maintenance and odds of a failure by multiple folds. So we keep it as simple as possible, and that keeps our reliability up, that keeps our maintenance down. 3 areas: CPU fan, rear case fan, power supply. That's all you got to worry about. The rest of it, you just kind of dust it around. Don't worry about it. It's fine. A lot of people have issues about issues they don't have issues with. So people that obsess about heat, you go, well, wow, you must really have some struggling problems with heat over there. No, never had a heat problem. Well, then why are you so obsessed with heat? So I don't have a heat problem. But why would you think you'd have a heat problem? Well, because I see all the stuff on the internet that talks about how to defeat heat. Right. I also see stuff on the internet on how to fix things that are broken that I don't have. So why am I fixing something or learning how to fix something that I don't have? That doesn't affect me. It's not a problem I need to fix. When you have a problem you actually need to fix, we'll be here to help you. But please don't get obsessed with anxiety over what you see people doing online. There's this unhealthy obsession with fans and cooling that may be appropriate if you're having a heat-related problem you're trying to resolve. Most people don't. Most people buying computers never give a second thought to how hot it's running unless it's crashing. So it's just the people that get a little too much information and they think, oh, I want to keep that from happening. The irony is they often cause it to happen. When if they didn't spend the money and have the anxiety and just left it alone as it was engineered, it would have been fine, as the majority of computer owners in the world will tell you, who don't do that, because why would you? Why are you fixing a problem you don't have and likely never would have had? So that would be my answer. I would not take the front off. I just wouldn't do it. And again, you might have to remove the optical drive to get the front off. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Nick Cavery says, what's the logic of a USB 3.2 Type-C connector on a motherboard back panel, and then a USB 3.2 Gen 2 by 2 on the front panel, when there seems to be no case with 3.2 Gen 2 by 2 on the front panel connection? So the front panel connection itself is not specific like that. The case manufacturers will tell you at the time they printed the instruction manual what it was compatible with, right? And then the USB committee is always modifying and changing things that are backwards compatible. But the case manufacturer is not likely going to reprint all their manuals or pay their documents, their engineers to redocument or update the document for the case they made last year to include this additional information. They moved on. At the time they wrote it, it was true. They might have said the maximum amount of RAM you could put in was 64 gigs when today it's 128 gigs. But they're not going to go back and rewrite those manuals. That's what it was when they made it. In all likelihood, any case that has a USB Type-C 3.2 port on it is automatically by2 compatible to the best of my knowledge. Now, if there ever gets to be a point where we get like the Type-C USB 4 or 4 generation 2, that's a different story because the cables that are carried forward may have to be of a different quality or have a different number of twists or shielding to achieve those kinds of speeds. I've wondered myself something very similar, which is, why is it you can get the front panel with 3.2 Gen 2 by 2, but not the rear one? It seems like it should be the other way around. But, you know, I was struggling with the little USB external SSD that's 3.2 Gen 2 by 2, trying to find a computer that had it. Because 3.2, just regular USB 3.2, with the Type-C is going to get me 1,000 megabyte per second transfer speed on that little SanDisk portable SSD. But the USB SanDisk portable SSD I bought is capable of twice that. It's capable of 2,000 megabytes per second, much faster, right? Twice the speed on the same plug and the same cable, so long as you have the Gen 2 times 2. That's the caveat, and you don't see it very much. It just never really caught on. And for some reason, the motherboard makers are including it on the front port header, but not on the rear one. Isn't that backwards? The case manufacturers don't advertise it because it likely didn't exist when the case documentation was written, but absolutely works. I've never seen it not work. So I think you're making an assumption that because it doesn't say it, it's almost like the QVL listing of this is the RAM, you know, that's qualified to work with the board. So no other RAM works? Well, we never said that. We just said this is the RAM we tested. The RAM we didn't test, we don't know. So the RAM you didn't test won't work? It might not. This is the RAM we tested. But the RAM you tested was 2 years ago, and they don't make any of that RAM anymore. What about the RAM on the market today? Well, we're not spending money to pay our employees to sit around testing RAM all day. Good luck. You'll probably be fine. QVL testing isn't what it used to be. It's not as important. Pretty much any RAM you buy now is going to work. Anyway, Nick, I think that answers the USB 3.2 Gen 2 question. Gen 2 by 2. Nick Caffrey says, I missed the case manufacturer's memo. No USB 3 on the front panel at all. I don't think you're talking about this case. There's no such thing as a USB-C front panel connection that's USB 2. There may be some mini PCs that are sold like that. That's kind of a weird thing some of these manufacturers have done. But that's USB 3 for sure. I mean, I could plug my, I have to find it first. I do have my SanDisk Gen 2 by 2 drive. But I would have to only use that one port up there to be able to achieve the 2,000 megabytes per second. On any other USB 3, I'd get 1,000, which still is fast, don't get me wrong. The back of the motherboard does have a USB Type-C on the back as well, but I believe that's not. I think that's USB-C Gen 2, but not by 2. I think the only by 2 is on the front port header, according to the motherboard manufacturer. The case manufacturer says, we're accommodating a lot of different motherboards. We don't know what you're putting in there. Fair enough. David Graham says Windows 11 24H2 puts a drive division on your drive. You mean a partition that Acronis can't read? We'll likely have Acronis on the show here closer to the holidays. We'll bring Begowden back on, and you'll be able to, make note of your questions, and you can ask Begowden, because I don't know if what you're saying is a misunderstanding and you're making an assumption, if you're doing something incorrectly, or if this is an actual issue. But I know who knows, and that's Begowden. And if you don't want to wait for Begowden to come on to the show, you can go to the Acronis support Reddit forum, which is completely free. Just type in the words Acronis and Reddit in your search engine, and that will take you to the free support on Reddit that you're free to ask a question or questions. And anybody's free to answer, but somebody who answers regularly on behalf of the company is Begowden. It's part of his job. He's also got another person. It's my understanding that he's trained. You can call it his backup. Little joke. Either way, getting an official response from the company, you don't have to open a support ticket. You don't have to go to their website and go through all of the process. You can simply leave your question on the Reddit forum, and that can be explained to you. I've never heard of it before, so I cannot confirm nor deny what you're saying is accurate or not. However, Begowden can, and probably other regular members of the Acronis Reddit forum know a lot more about it than I do. But we'll look forward to having him on, because he's always a pleasure to talk to, and I always learn new things about Acronis that I had no idea, that it could do certain things, and I'm sure there's a lot more about it I don't know than what I do know. I tend to kind of use a tool to do a task, and sometimes somebody says to me, you can also use that tool this entirely different way. I go, oh, never thought of that before. There's plenty of YouTube videos that might show you a crescent wrench can be used in the other way and can be used to remove nails instead of the claw of a hammer. And it's designed to do that? I didn't know that. Just stuff like that. Fascinating stuff. So Acronis has a lot of abilities that I know nothing about. And if we went through all of them, Begowden would be here for probably 3 days. So we try and cram as much information in as we can in about 2 hours, and save the rest for next time. But a lot of what we talk about is based on your interests. So you let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about, and we can add it to our notes for when he's here next. Ron, my friend Ron Hillier joins us. This dog is happy that he just downed a Burger King Whopper. Yeah, it sounds like a lucky dog. He's eating better than I am. Ajaki says, SATA SSD or NVMe M.2, which is faster? The fastest SATA was called SATA 3, and that came out about 13 years ago, 12 years ago, and was then, at SATA 3, they couldn't go any faster. That peaked it out, that saturated it, and that's all there is. There's no SATA 4. There never will be. So the next way you could go faster was with M.2, but M.2 could be SATA with the exact same speed limitation, just a different interface, or NVMe. Now NVMe has the potential to run anywhere from 2 times faster to, let's see, if you have Gen 5, you could run up to 30 times faster than SATA 3. But it depends which drive you bought, what it's capable of, and which motherboard you plugged it into and what it's capable of. But with SATA, it's always the same. We reached our peak on SATA speed at 600 megabits per second, 600 megabytes per second, back around 2013, 2014, and that was it. We reached the top of the mountain. There was nowhere else to go. After that, we were introduced, or during that time there at that peak of SATA, we were introduced to M.2, which was also SATA, but then also offered NVMe shortly thereafter. Some will do both. SATA is the inferior older tech that's much, 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 much slower, and NVMe is the latest tech that has the promise of just doubling every single generation. So if generation 3 was running at 4,000 megabytes a second. Then generation 4 SATA is 8,000, and generation 5, which is what we're on now, is 16,000, and generation 6 will be 32,000. But when you want to go that fast, you're going to have to spend more money and deal with a bit more heat. Of course, we're not at Gen 6 yet. All the standards have been defined. We haven't even fully saturated Gen 5 yet. But when your maximum speeds on a SATA drive, whether it's M.2 or a SATA cable, you're going to see total read speeds on like Crystal Disk Mark of about 550, 560 megabytes per second versus 3,600, 7,300, or 15,000 on Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 5 NVMe on an accompanying motherboard that is capable of those speeds if you spend that money. So there's no comparison, right? So I was just thinking in my head what the math was on that. If you could do 15,000 on the latest, and we're not quite there yet, we're getting close, but if you could do 15,000 megabytes per second, just quickly math, right? And we're doing 550 megabytes per second on the fastest SATA drive you can buy. I just rounded down to 500 and then said, okay, 500 is half of 1,000. 15 times 2 is 30. That means it's 30 times faster. My math is way off because 50 is quite a large number that I'm rounding down. But if I rounded it to 600, the math's a little more difficult. 10 times 600 is 6,000. 20 times 600 would be 12,000. And right now, Gen 5 drives are hitting a little more than 12,000, 13,000 megabytes per second. And that would put you a little over 20 times faster than SATA. But it's been that way for some time now. I mean, it's not like, what is it today? It's the same as it was years ago. It's just NVMe drives have actually become cheaper than SATA drives, which is weird. You'll spend more for the slower SATA drive than you will for the faster NVMe. So why anybody's buying them, I don't understand. Shamim Kashviras renews membership, now a member for 17 months. Hello, Carey, he says, thank you for all the content and useful knowledge sharing in this channel. I wish you the best. Well, thank you, Shamim. Thank you for being a member here. 17 months. Joins us all the way from Sweden. I think that's going to wrap it up for us today, but thank you guys for all of your questions and participation. Charlie Purdy suggests I start a financial channel. He said, I had to take a 7-year exam to learn foreign economy. You are very smart. Well, Charlie, you're easy to impress. I'm just observational, right? I can see over the last few years as an adult, and I started paying attention, how the economies of the countries are shifting and how they're sort of equalizing in many ways, where the euro and the pound used to be really much, much higher than the dollar. You know, maybe it's this whole World Bank thing. I don't know. All I know is everything's kind of starting to equalize a bit. We don't have, where we have differences are taxes and tariffs. That's going to vary from government to government. But the value of the dollar versus whatever currency is being used, the US dollar versus Canadian dollars, Australian dollars, for the most part, seems like they're pretty darn close. But I'm nowhere near an expert.
Check your email and wrap it up.
I forgot to check email. Thank you. Let's check it. Let's see. Emails. Charlie Purdy sends an Amazon gift card. $100. Wow, thank you, Charlie. He says, I've been getting a lot of chats. How do you highlight the name I'm responding to? You use the @ symbol, like you're sending an email, with the chat member's name following the @ symbol, and it should highlight it for them. I don't know if you see it. They see it. You could try it now. You could type @CareyHolzman space hi Carey or whatever, and it should highlight my name on your message. Thank you for that very generous Amazon gift card, as always. We have Luke Greenia. Our friend Luke in Vermont sends a $25 PayPal contribution. He says, there's a little something to help you out. Thank you, Luke. Fred Vandermeulen sent $5.20 in PayPal. Right on. Thank you, Fred. Our friend Richard Claiborne sent $50 via PayPal. He says, this is for the extra hassle. I never wanted any of these inconveniences for you. It's my job, man. That's what I do. I try to do it as efficiently as possible. And again, when working with unfamiliar parts, we hope for the best. And when it happens, and it just has to be dealt with. It's life. I do my best to control it, but it's still chaos. Our friend Mortant contributes a $50 Amazon gift card. He says, hello, Carey, Mara, and everyone in the chat. Here's $50 for the channel. Thank you, Mortant. Mortant1210, also known as Thomas. Right on. Richard wants to know, were heat sinks on my NVMe drives not necessary? Well, you added these heats. They certainly didn't come this way. This is something you added. They're very inexpensive, these heat sinks. They're probably $6 or $7 a piece, 2 for $10. And I don't know why you added them. However, it's not hurting anything. When I'm building a system, and ideally I'm picking a motherboard that has heat sinks on the board already. And those heat sinks are more decorative and they match the aesthetic. So you can see we've got a heat sink right underneath our CPU here. And that's where your main NVMe drive, your S880 is located, Richard. But you'll also see we have an NVMe slot here, here, and here. But unfortunately, the manufacturer of the board did not give us the heat shields that they do sell those boards. They cost more money from this manufacturer, from MSI. And so your drives are completely exposed, right? So whatever the label is, if this is a Samsung drive or whatever, essentially, if you're experiencing a heat-related problem with your NVMe drive, it'll slow down, and then when it cools off, it'll get fast again. Then you go, I have a problem, how do I fix it? And I'd say you need to add a heat sink. But what's happening online is people are watching videos or reading about content, how you can buy these heat sinks. They're very inexpensive. They're very easy to install to prevent an overheat situation from occurring. The problem is you probably weren't having one to begin with, so there was nothing to prevent. And if you were having one, this may not be a big enough heat sink to solve that. Then there's the second question of aesthetic. You can go over the top with your heatsink. They'll find every reason to separate you from your money. And it doesn't matter how effective it is or how difficult it is to install. It's look how cool it looks. Now, I've got a couple like that here that I was going to demonstrate. Just because it looks cool and it's expensive doesn't mean you need it. Like, take a look at this monster right here. Look at this heatsink. That, your NVMe goes underneath that. And that would then, you know, your motherboard would accommodate this. Most motherboards won't. You could do that. You could add RGB to it and run a power cable if you wanted to add to your cable management. They make these. Here's another one. You know why these are new in the box? Because they're unnecessary. I've yet to find either a customer that actually needs it or a case that they'll fit in. These will all coincidentally fit in your case. So if you like the look of it, we could certainly put them on. They're not going anywhere. I don't have any plans for them. And they make them even with cooling fans, so you can keep your NVMe drive that's not overheating, but you're afraid it will. So you add this giant thing onto your NVMe drive, and then you have to find a place to plug it in, and then you add the added fan noise and dust you got to worry about. So you could do that, and this is not cheap, by the way. The fancier it looks, the more expensive it is. Whether or not it's going to help you at all, I can't say, but you might be going for a certain look. If you go on AliExpress and you look for these, they've got them in every shape, size, color, and price point. Anywhere from $3 to $80. How effective do they work? As far as I can tell, nobody needs them. I mean, maybe some people need them, but it's pretty unusual. People are normally doing it because they want, they're wanting a certain, it really looks cool. Here's one I think looks cool. I specifically bought this because I thought it looked cool. I have no use for it. It's still in the box. I must have had it 8 months now. It's probably 20 bucks. I don't know that this works any more effective than anything else, nor do I know that it's even necessary. But we throw it on there because we watch this content. People say, oh, this is how you solve heat problems. But that's making the assumption you are having heat problems. Other people are throwing it on, as I mentioned, because they just think it looks cool. Now, if you asked me, should I put heat sinks on my NVMe drives? My answer would have been, do you need heat sinks on your NVMe drives? Are you suffering heat-related issues? And depending on how you answer that question, will determine my answer to you. But if you said, well, I did it anyway, whether I needed it or not, then I'd say, well, I'd take them off and use the one included with the motherboard. But this motherboard didn't include them. Now the question is, will they look better with the glass panel on this motherboard with these heat sinks on, regardless if you need them? Yes, they will look better. So therefore, we're going to leave them up. But not because they're heat sinks, but because they're pretty. They're going to match the black case in the black board instead of seeing the colors of the label on the NVMe drive itself. You see, the answer keeps shifting and changing depending on each customer's needs, whether we're solving a problem, or we're trying to achieve a certain look, or we're trying to fit into a certain budget, or we're dealing with something that's already done, and then we figure out, do we need to spend time to undo this, or is it fine the way it is? In this case, I think it's better just because it's going to look better. But is it necessary? I can't imagine why that would be necessary. Maybe, but probably not. David Martinez says, where can I find the build parts for this computer? All of the links, like when we prepped the motherboard here, we did so in a video back at Studio B. And then we put a link to that video in part 1 of this series. I think that link is still carried forward in part 3. However, some of the parts are no longer available. No, wait, that was yesterday's build. No, today's build, all the parts should still be. Never mind what I just said. Yesterday's build, that was one where I was using some used parts that weren't available anymore. Almost always, if you look under the video description of my videos, you will see all the parts going all the way back to 2008. That's how we've always done it. But if you're watching a multi-part series, we may not include the same data in part 3 that we didn't talk about in part 3. So it should absolutely be there in part 1. But maybe something we have to look at. I think it's there, but I'm not sure. And that part 1 will have a link to the original build video for the motherboard. In other words, part 1 of this whole build was utilizing a build, the motherboard prep that we did months ago. That's its own video that's linked. And then that video has the parts for that piece of it. It's not normally done that way, but it doesn't make sense to go through all of the administrative hours and hours of research and tasks to keep updating video notes because one person wants it. If you go back to our links to each related video are the related links to that specific video. And that is just the way we've always done it. It's never been any different. Brian says those NVMe heat sinks might get you 5 more views. You're right. You're right. All right, guys. That'll wrap it up for us for today. Thank you so much for hanging out. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks to Richard for his patience as we work through these little challenges. I think it's a good decision to move on to this case. It's still, not perfect, but hey, way better than what we had. And that gets us closer to getting it in Richard's hands. We're this close. So I'm sure Richard will be excited to get it. I'll be excited to move on to the next thing. And we'll certainly hear from Richard after he receives it. If he's got any problems or questions or, the opposite, he loves it and everything's great, we'll find out soon enough. Thank you for all of our Super Chat contributors, all of our members. Without you, this would not be possible. Members like Charlie Purdy, Buster, Paul Gray in Australia, Frankie B in New York, Oystein in Norway. We've got friends like Tom Jackson and Mortant and Dave Stetzel. So much generosity from our community. And then I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, and I don't mean to. I apologize. Rob Foster. So many very generous members, super members, Luke Greenia. And then, of course, the members themselves. And on top of that, even just our regular viewers that are such an important part of the community and add value through just being nice people. Thank you for being nice people. That'll wrap it up for me for today. I will see you all again very, very soon. Until next time, bye for now.